the first reaction that I got was like people hated it. And it was the first comments on iTunes.
I didn't even know you could comment on iTunes.
Like you could review a movie and give it stars, and people gave it like 1 star, worst movie ever. You know, too much slow motion, too much this, too much that, the worst movie, like they blew it. I mean, just, dude, I was like devastated.
I approve waterboarding. They're talking about wakeboarding. The thing about wakeboarding, every trick is an invert.
Backside.
Air railings.
A new dimension.
We are back. Another episode of the Grad Matters podcast. Today we welcome on a very special guest, Sean Kilgus. How's it going?
Good, man. Good. Thanks for having me on.
Dude, thanks for coming out. This is a exciting one. You've been a part of wakeboarding for how many years would you say?
Well, I started wakeboarding myself, I think in 95, 96 was like the first time. Actually, no, I misspoke. 93 was the first time I wakeboarded. It was like bungee straps, little surfboard kind of style. And then I want to say 95 and 96 was when I really, you know, twin tips and all the different things. And I started riding with like Brent Starr, who was like the Northwest, one of the main Northwest legends at the time, like up in Washington State where I grew up. And he was like Mason Lake hardcore, which is like, you know, and he was one of the guys that did, you know, Pete Rose's and just ripped. And he's a Northwest guy, you know, so it was cool. And so I got to go ride with him. And that's really where kind of like all of that stuff started for me, was like passion for like riding and getting, I went to board stock in 96.
I wanted to bring this up. All right.
Dude.
How was that?
I hitchhiked from Portland Pro Tour, and all the way from Portland Pro Tour, I hitchhiked and got to Lake Shasta. I mean, that sounds like a little bit of a reach. So basically I was at a hotel and was like, these guys were like, hey, you want to go to board stock? And I'm like, what's that? And they're like, it's in Lake Shasta. Everyone's going. And I'm like, what? And I was just a kid that loved, I was like 19 and I was a wakeboard fan and I loved wakeboarding. And I said, yeah, I mean, sure. And they're like, well, come on with us. And so I jumped in and drove all the way down there. And I can't remember if it was the Jeff Joby or not Jeff Joby, but can't remember the guy that actually took me to board stock. But I remember getting there, and then I stayed with the Icon wakeboard team, and on their houseboat, which they had 2 of the Bud girls from the Pro Tour that somehow ended up on it was just crazy.
So you just stumbled into this wild situation.
Yeah. And then it was one of the craziest weeks of my life, just as a spectator, just like, you know, but that's where I met Ron from Sideways. And then he actually, I'm not saying I was drinking, because I would have been underage.
We're past, it's been 7 years.
It's been 7 years.
But you weren't drinking. You weren't saying you weren't drinking. Right?
Yeah. So anyways, but Ron put me in one of his movies called 24/7, which came out, I want to say in 1997, which had a board stock, like a little vignette, kind of like a story, board stock section for that film. It was one of his early wakeboard films from Sideways. And I did a scene from Rescue Rangers, which is a cartoon when I was a kid. And I impersonated, and they were all messed up, man. It was like this guy named Mole, this character. And so he told me he filmed me and then put that in. I was literally wearing my high school football shirt. I was 19. It was crazy. But so I loved wakeboarding, and I love wakeboarding now, but I loved it so much. I mean,
from the rip, it was
snowboarding in the winter.
Yeah, because you're a Northwest
so it was like
guy. So
all about seasons change, and then it was like snowboarding 5 days a week. Like I was hardcore about both sports.
That's so fascinating, because I'm from the Midwest, so it was the same. It's summer, winter. It's never year round of either activity. I guess you go to Hood over there maybe, but
I was so glad that I had the seasons, because it was like you go so hard on one thing, and then you're so thankful that you got to take a break and then heal up. Maybe you get a couple months or a month in between seasons, and then you're stoked to go.
There's nothing like those first days back.
All you're doing is
snow.
watching videos. You're just watching snowboard videos to get ready for snowboard season. You're watching wakeboard videos to get ready for wakeboarding. And by the time the season comes to an end, you're like, I'm burned out. I don't want to wakeboard anymore. I'm so excited for snowboarding. Yeah. And there's even different friend groups, because not like a lot of the wakeboarders did snowboard, so we would go together. But there was also like a whole wakeboard group of people through Northwest Sessions and all these groups of people. And we didn't necessarily then snowboard. Then I'd be snowboarding with my college buddies. That was like their thing.
Yeah.
And so I was always going season to season to season to season. And I just, dude, miss those days. Those were fun.
Yeah, you're in Florida now. You're around warmth, so
Yeah.
not getting the seasons as much. All right. So we usually start off with a few quick questions. I'm going the first one, OG one. Favorite grab?
Okay, so at my elder age of 48, I'm going to say that my favorite grab is the only grab I can physically do, which is an indie grab. So it was always my favorite grab on a snowboard. And I would say mute grab is probably like my favorite for like rodeo flips on a snowboard or front
Mutes
side
on a
threes.
snowboard feel, even
They're
just straight up
floaty.
mute.
They're just so
So
floaty.
good.
But indie grab would be probably the most common thing, because if I'm doing a half cab poke or a half cab wing or backside 180 poke, it's always indie.
Yeah.
It's the only
A
one.
classic.
It's the only
indie.
one I can reach, dude.
I feel like if you go indie, you could probably go tail
Well,
if you
man,
really wanted to.
I
With
don't-
wakeboards, how big they are these days, you could definitely get some tail.
It's the funniest thing. Like, I wish I had video of it. Me trying to do a tail grab looks like this seizuring.
Just
I
not
like,
good.
like it's just not. It'd be unpleasant for everybody. It's just funny.
Well, you know what you got, and you bust it out. That's
just stay in your lane.
that's
Stay in
what
your
you
lane.
do. All right, so you've been part of a lot of wakeboard films. I got another quick question.
Yep.
The year is 2025. Somebody asks you to make a wakeboard film,
Ah.
similar to Prime or Defy.
Mm-hmm.
How big would the budget need to be to do so, and who would you put in it?
Oh my gosh. Well, okay. I actually was approached, I want to say 2015 or 2016. So it's probably about a year after Prime, by Teton Gravity Research, which was at TGR. They're the biggest,
huge.
probably the biggest, if not one of the biggest action sports film producers. Are out of Jackson Hole, and what they were doing is like cooperative sponsorship of, like multiple sports. So they would be the kind of like executive produce a mountain biking film, executive produce a snowboarding
Made
film.
some cool shit too.
And they do their own thing, which is incredible. And then they were basically approached me about doing a wakeboard film, and what would that take? They said, if you could just write the ticket, like write not only the budget, they said, or create the story, which would be the traveling, whatever you want to do, the types of cameras and all of it, like the crew that you
All
have to help, the
encompassing.
whole deal. Like, give us a budget, give us a what this looks like. And I remember, it was upwards of like $750,000, because I was like, well, we want helicopter, Cineflex, we want, kind of like, that's it, that's all, like all the biggest snowboarding films.
If you're asking, I'm
If
telling
you're,
you.
yeah, if I'm in, and they had all those resources. They had the Cineflex to mount to vehicles, to boats, and that was one of the things I flew out there and talked to them. And so it was like, where would you want to go? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's all these places. There's at the time it was like Tahiti for tow and stuff at Chopu, or it was all these different things where it was like, bring these athletes and go to this place, and then it's only about that, or this volcanic lake, and we'd airlift a boat in for just that purpose and shoot that process, just to like
it's cool. Yeah.
just hose it down with like production, because I was at the time, I loved like Art of Flight, and I loved these big iconic films that were in other sports that were just like, every single second of the film was epic.
Yeah.
Whether it's the soundtrack, the story, the visuals, that was what it was. So I'd say that like, north of that, right? Which would be, and somebody may get that in the sport of wakeboarding, but it was something that seemed like we couldn't get there in that sport unless somebody
Outside
came
factor.
in and said, we want to do this,
Yeah.
So, so, and then, man, it's probably shifted for me. Obviously, Danny Harf, Danny's done as a friend, as a mentor in that space. He's way younger than me. It's funny, but I just so much love and respect for him, and he gave me a place to live. Right, he's one of those people that like he had my back, and when we did Defy, we traveled the world together to do that film, and we went through the struggles of the economy in 2008 crashing, and there was no money, and what are we going to do? And Danny's paying for helicopters and out of his own pocket, and his budgets are getting cut, like his pay is getting cut with everybody, and it's just what's happening in the space, in that wakeboard world. So I always wanted to have a chance to make another movie with Danny, because I was like, dude, let's do this again. And we actually, we talked about Defy 2.0. Like, what would that look like? And we were talking about it, I want to say 4 years ago. And I was actually approaching Red Bull about a project. And the hardest part about that is, since Danny wasn't a Red Bull athlete, it was like, how do we do this? How do we find, I mean, Red Bulls or Monster, these people are doing these, they're supporting their in-house productions, like Red Bull Media House. Monster does their same thing. They're like financing with the marketing budgets. It doesn't matter that we don't sell movies anymore. It's just like, well, we don't care about sales. We just want to, if the movie's $1 million, here's your $1 million. Now go make this movie. So then we'll use all the assets and social media and stuff, and we'll get our eyeballs on, or get all the things. So I was pitching a project, a Defy 2.0, which shifted over to like no longer a Defy 2.0 because we don't have that support we need. So where can we get it? Well, Red Bull was like, well, there might be an interest. And so I was pitching now, not a Defy name, not as Defy 2, but a movie that would include Danny, but we probably cater to more like the Red Bull guys like Parks and Grubb and the other guys, who obviously there's foiling now. There's these adventure opportunities with those type of guys doing their thing that I was like, well, maybe that'll lend itself. Guys like Massey, that I just love Massey, loved him in Prime. And he's at the time, and still obviously incredible, but like at the time he was like probably not peaking, but like just blowing up, doing new tricks and inventing these things. I'm like, Massey's Red Bull. He's another guy we could work with. And so there was these guys that were Dowdy, some other guys that were all the Red Bull guys. I was like, okay, well, this will get us the support we need, but these guys are also legit. So it's like, I'm excited about this, but I want Danny to be a part of it too, because he's my dude. Like, he's the guy that I'm like, so thankful for what he's done for me. And even if Danny was like cameo at that time, cause he didn't need to be Danny Harf anymore. The guy that was like Defy, he could just be,
it was kind of legacy like mode at that point.
Exactly. He could just come out. He could just come out and ride as Danny, and everyone's just going to be like, stop to watch him and be stoked that it's Danny riding. Like, oh, cool. Yeah. Even if it's like grabs, and it doesn't even matter. It'd be cool. So, and obviously if I got to bring everybody that I loved working with, I mean, Keith Lyman was, groundbreaking. Benny G, like at the time, like, I mean, I love the man as a human being. He's one of the greatest people I've ever known. Yeah, I mean, Benny G, he was iconic in Better Effect. I mean, he was like blowing up at that time. He got Rider of the Year the following year, and it was so cool to be a part of his career at that time too. I loved working with Aaron Reed because as a wake skater, like I was probably one of the, I don't want to say it was any different than Ron or Justin. Justin, they all did it too, but wake skating had their own thing with cassette, and they did their own thing. A lot of the guys, like, and understandably, they wanted their sport to be separate.
You want to be a different sport.
100%. So I understood, and I wasn't against it, but I loved wake skating too. I couldn't do it necessarily, but what am I saying? I couldn't do wakeboarding.
Hard, dude.
It's so hard.
Wake skating is so damn hard.
Yeah, and so I loved being a part of having those guys in my movies as like to show people Reed Hansen, Aaron Reed, like I wanted people to see them doing their thing. So I loved working with Reed Hansen. I loved working with Aaron Reed. I loved working with the wake skaters in my films as well. So that, like, I think Reed at that season of life, if I had that second chance, would have been, he's probably arguably still the best wake skater right now. Like, he can go out right now and do, this is what I've been told, and he's told me that he can go out and do everything he's ever done. Like,
really?
Almost first try.
How often does he ride? Does he ride still?
Maybe a couple times a year, but he goes out and busts like 3 flips wake to wake and like first try.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's insane. Somebody should be filming this and doing something with this.
You got a phone, Reed Hansen. Why don't you post some of this? Let's see the 3 flip, bud.
Reed is doing quite well with his life now, with his new career and
Definitely
family.
is.
So we're very proud of him.
We just want to see some clips, Reed.
Yeah,
That's
we just want to see you ride, bro.
Some clips, dude.
Yeah, I don't know. There's so many guys like that that really impacted me in filmmaking too. That really showed me their writing complemented what I was trying to do as a filmmaker.
Yeah,
and style. So Randall Harris, like, and Benny G, like those guys were so. It had to be perfect. It had to be this and that. Of course, Rusty was like just the muscle and power of like and just the hard work ethic of his riding and just powerhouse of his personality.
Well, dude, I was watching right before you got here. I was watching Butter Effect, and I was on Rusty's section as you walked in, and it was just it's just like it still looks the same as he rides today. It's just like pure like muscle power, like football
And
player on
perfection.
the water. But it's perfect.
Perfection. It's like he's my size but lean. He'll tease me for this. One of the famous Rusty quotes about me, which he probably be like, "Oh, kill! I was just kidding." But when he was like in the prime time and he was like young, like Hayden Deegan style, like right. He's like, I'd be like, I think I was trying to relate myself as somewhat athletic to Rusty because I was like, in my space, as where I came up snowboarding and wakeboarding, I was an average, decent snowboarder, could do flips. And,
better than average.
yeah, you know what I mean?
Good.
Like thinking I'm decent, right? He was like, Kill. He's like, you're active. You're not really an athlete. And I'm just like, dang. Like,
I'm gonna use that
Dude.
at some point.
Yeah. And I was
that's
like,
me.
yeah. And I was like, dang, Russ, thanks, man. Well, now it's funny because he's now, he's still ripped. I mean, it's crazy, but he's older now. So he gets all the, pissing and moaning of me where I was at physically all the years of back surgeries and just so banged up,
Yeah.
But I was never obviously an athlete on a pro level. So I guess but that's all he's ever known, right? So he's
That's a good little dig. I like that one.
Yeah, he's really good at the little digs for sure.
That's what everybody said. All right, so let's talk Butter Effect because I feel like, actually maybe before Butter Effect, I want to know when was the first time you picked up a camera?
So that's what I wanted. That's one of the things that really. So for me, my wakeboarding career really. I don't want to say career. My wakeboarding passion really started, in '93, like I said, and it was me standing on the edge of a dock and hitching rides from boats, any boat. Hey, does your boat have a rope, or can I go wakeboarding? And I met Tom and Carol Greetham, which was these people, just a husband and wife out doing slalom skiing out in front, Horsehead Bay, there in Gig Harbor, where Brett V lived, and it was a saltwater bay, and I was hitching rides. I had a gas can. At the time, I think I hadn't got my craft perfected. At the time, I was just hitching. Then eventually, I was out there at a gas can, and eventually I had a 10-foot pole, but it was like the uncollapsible, just full-size 10-foot pole that you would slide over a ski pylon and had a cable to the front. I had my own fat sack bag that I would bring, and at the dock that I would hitch a ride from, they had a hose. And so I could put it in the boat, and on the dock, I could fill up this fat sack. And so I perfected.
Oh, you were dialed.
Dude, I was so dialed. Because I didn't grow up, my family never had a boat, so I fell in love with wakeboarding, and it was like the most heartbreaking thing to fall in love with. And then there would be summers where I wouldn't even get to go. Or Tom and Carol would be like, hey, come over and ride with us. Say, like, really? It's been a month. And the summers are so short up there that it was like, I started skateboarding more because I was like, I'm not getting to wakeboard, so I just don't even want to do it. And then they'd be like, they'd revitalize my stoke because they'd take me out, and then they had a barefoot 200 Mastercraft, and I would do like back roll, back roll, back roll, back roll, and then 360s, and so. But that's like where it all started for me. So I started, and then I like met, got to ride with Brent Starr. Well, he was doing Northwest Sessions, which was Rob Hyatt's thing, and Mike and Nick Ennin and Brett V and Danny Bergman. And then I moved to Bellingham, which is like a college town up north, like almost to Vancouver in Washington. There's Mike and Nick Ennin lived there, and a kid named Danny Bergman. And I met Danny Bergman's parents when I was a busboy at Black Angus, and I saw the dad wearing a Liquid Force shirt. I'm like, oh, Liquid Force. Like, I wakeboard. They're like, oh, our son does. So, of course, me being the gift of gab, they're like, well, here, call us up. And it was before cell phones and stuff. And so I met their son, who they had a Malibu VLX, it was 1999 at the time. And I went out there and I went and tried to wakeboard from going from like Bayliner size wakes, doing back rolls where you just like have to pop it off a Bayliner, to a fully slammed VLX. And I over rotated everything. I got smoked. I could barely walk the next day. And I was like more in love than I'd ever been with wakeboarding. And those are the people like the Bergman family that like gave me a place to live or took me wakeboarding. Mike and Nick Ennin, like we'd go ride and film at their family's summer house down in oh gosh, now I can't even think of what it's called. But anyways, down in Mount Vernon area. But there's all those guys, Brent Starr, I would go to their houses and we'd film and we'd ride, and then we'd do the Northwest Sessions together. My buddy Greg Young, we'd all go to the Northwest Sessions on those weekends. We'd travel together and we would film. And that's the first time I started filming, and I was horrible at it, dude. everybody was like, "You're really bad at this." I'm like, "Well, who's good at filming? Are you good at filming it?" I mean, it was literally like a high 8 or whatever, a Super 8, not even Super 8, like a high 8 camera. Like it was just like an old video camera, and I was so bad at it. But what I realized, and I saved up with student loans, and I bought a little TRV 900 Sony 3-chip, and I started filming. I started filming with the intention to make a wakeboarding film. So I filmed my friends, and my friend Bobby Booth had access to the Western Washington Digital Center, which had Final Cut Pro and a studio. And so he would take we would go in there, and he would sit and he'd edit this footage. So I made my very first video, which is called The Rebel Yell. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I remember this. It was like 1999 or something, 2000. And I had me and friends, college friends, and snowboarding footage and wakeboarding footage. And it was really more of like a bunch of really cruddy camera footage of all of us wakeboarding, snowboarding, and all of us had our sections. And it was like people barely doing wake jumps or whatever, because it was just meant to be for fun. And it was that next year that I was like, well, what if I did a wakeboarding video of the Northwest Riders guys? And so I started filming with those guys. And then I was like video sections. And I'm watching, at the time I'm doing this, I'm watching Ron's movies from Sideways, and I'm watching Mark Bame's movies, and I'm watching the big snowboard films. And so I'm thinking, man, I got to get to a film camera eventually. I want to make real movies, but these guys are so much better than me. And it wasn't about that they were better. It was just that I knew I wasn't there. Like I knew
where you needed to be.
Right. And so I was so excited about it, and I wanted to make good movies and stuff. And so that's really where it started. Was like my first movie was called The Line Dependency. And that was just all Northwest Riders for the most part. And then I want to say the next movie was Concussion Project. And now I got to tell you a Keith Lyman's story. So Concussion Project was Northwest Riders. And then I also got to film with Josh Sanders and Daniel Watkins, because Rob Hyatt, who ran Northwest Sessions, said, "Hey man," he was the team O'Brien team manager. He's like, "Come with me to Florida." I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. So I went to Florida my very first time to film with Shapiro, Josh Sanders, Daniel Watkins, Nick Weinecker, right? So like huge dudes that I just literally watched them in Sideways films. I'm now filming with these guys, and I'm shooting with a TRV 900 camera, and I'm out at Shapiro's house with glass calm water. It was like, I can't believe this is happening. It was crazy. And then Keith Lyman's story. The team manager, he rode for a company called Crown, which was not in existence for very long. And there was one guy that was a part of it. I think his name is Jeremy Deming, and he was a great guy. And the other guy, I think that he was part of why they didn't, So that guy drops Keith Lyman off at my house, like on Lake Stevens. I was living in Seattle area, and my other buddy, Ben Lee, that I was living with, that boat, the old Malibu, they bought it for my friend Danny Bergman. So they had this boat, they called it the Emma Peel, named after a snowboard. And Keith Lyman shows up at my house. He's 17. He rides for Crown. I don't know anything about this kid. He's like, hey, just film him. He's here. I'm like, okay. So I go out, and I'd never seen in person, because this is before even the trip to Florida, I'd never seen a pro wakeboarder ride before. Like on that level. I'd seen the local amateur pro guys.
Year-round pros or whatever.
But I've never seen a dude do a whirly bird 10 feet out in the flats. I'd never seen, and Keith Lyman was Keith Lyman. There was just exceptional, incredible rider, and hits double ups, full send off a double up, and goes out in the flats on an off 3 or something crazy. I remember just being like, this is next level, right? And so I got to film Keith Lyman when he was brand new, when he was riding for Crown before J-Star, before all this stuff. So that was Concussion Project, and that was
good name.
Yeah, it was, because it was all about getting smoked to figure out these tricks. But that was Northwest Riders and, guys and pro Florida guys all in one. That next year, I was like, I'm going for it. I moved to Florida.
Okay.
And I was like, I want to, and Keith at the time, because we had built a friendship, well, I have an extra bed in my room, him and Benny G. And Benny G's working a job and trying to wakeboard. He just moved to Florida, right? So him and Keith knew each other from back in Massachusetts or whatever. So they lived together. I moved in with them, short-lived. I think I was there for a month or something, in 2 months, but it got me to Florida, got a car, and I started making my side. And my side was you know, kind of the big startup for me because it was still mini DV, but it was like shooting Sean Watson on a towable rail with Parks and Chad and all these guys and Danny. And I mean, it was a big kind of like another breakthrough for me was my side because it was like Northwest Riders, Randall Harris. Like, so we went on a trip with the Northwest Riders to California to Bullard's Bar, got Randall, got all these guys, and we shot a whole movie, like the whole section of California stuff with Parks and Shane in California, like crazy stuff was just happening. They did a big store in Alliance about it. And then I lived with Watson and and so I got to, and Benny G's first big part, Aaron Reed's first big part, like those guys, all of their sections, they're kind of their early sections and my career really launched together at the same time.
So how's this work when you're hanging out with these guys? Are you like, hey, I'm filming a video and then you're like planning sessions, or you just kind of like hanging around and you're like on the boat filming, you're doing the towable rails? Like how does that work, I guess?
You figure you got guys that are so established like Watson and Parks and Chad. I mean, Danny, like they're already well on their way where they're scheduled video shoots with these big premiere.
They've got oblos.
Totally.
Obligations. Yeah.
And then there's me that's like this, hey, would you film with me so I can put you in my movie? And they're like, sure. And Watson was one of those guys. I would say that he's one of the most generous people because he's just kind. He just was always so generous, but he was also Watson. So he was like iconic in wakeboarding. And he was a bigger than life athlete who was very gentle, like very generous. He's like, you can use my car. Or like, he was just so generous and he really helped me, gave me a place to live and stuff like that. So I got to also film with him, as a result of just being there with him every day. And so that was my side. Like that was like pretty much all Florida. And it was all intentional shoots, like not just me filming my buddies, but going to California, doing this thing or doing that thing. So it was a pretty big, my first kind of film that actually paid out too. So I made some money.
Yeah. What are we talking about my side? Because did it have sponsors? Like how do you,
so my very first movies were sponsored by, my very first sponsor ever was Bill Baker from Bakes Marine, which was a Malibu dealership in Seattle.
Still around, right?
So Bakes is still around. Bill's retired, but Paul owns it now. And dude, they were my first sponsor. Like, I think it was like $750 or something, $500 just to help pay for a helicopter for Concussion Project.
Okay.
Right. And so that was another thing. I wanted helicopters because the biggest, wakeboarding films use helicopters. And I wanted to do that. Right. So that's what I went for right away. It was like helicopters and production value.
Well, you see the standard of what they're doing. And it's like, well, if I want to be on that level, I have to meet the standard.
I mean, I didn't have the money and the budget to shoot all film. But if I could afford a couple hours in a helicopter, let's do that. And we got those cool shots, and then my side helped with sponsors. Malibu was a big sponsor for mine for several years, like with my movies. And then that helped us get to Running on Empty, which was, more money from sponsors, like maybe $2,500, bigger leaps and trips and traveling trips to Eastern Washington and Florida and just all these different things. Now it's like a full Keith Lyman section, Aaron Reed again, Benny G, like, all these different guys, getting to shoot with Danny Harf. Like that was huge. That was like my first time where it's like Danny and I filming a bunch and doing these crazy rails and Rusty again and Chad and just all these guys. And so it was like, that was like a kind of an iconic.
So you're making a name for yourself, and obviously Danny is there along the way. So I think this is a great time to dive into a guest question from none other than Danny Harf.
Oh man,
it's gonna take a minute to hook up. So,
hey Sean, Danny Harf here. Miss you, buddy. Love you, buddy. Stoked you're on the podcast. First off, I'll say that working with you was definitely the highlight of my career.
What?
And some of my best memories were out on the water filming with you. So thanks for all the good times. My question for you is, of all the movies you made, which was your favorite and which was the most profitable for Sean Kilgus? I know budgets and expenses were always different, but just curious, which movie was the most profitable for Sean Kilgus? And can you tell us how much? Have fun on the podcast. Talk soon. Bye.
Thanks, Danny, for that one. I was probably going to ask anyway, so we got him in. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. We got Danny Harf. So we'll start with the first one. Favorite project?
Well, okay, so because, and I do want to, if we can, just in that, because we kind of jumped ahead, right? Because
Sure.
there's
We'll dive back.
right,
but
but anyway, so my favorite project was Defy, because working with Danny and everything it took for us to do that movie. I mean, we did a trailer just to raise money to do the film, and
it's kind of smart.
it was, and Danny paid for it because I didn't have any money, and Danny was like, well, you know, I mean, it was worth the investment for him because he had like a dedicated filmmaker, and we just had to go film. And so it was like, all right, well, the economy's crashed, but what else are we gonna do? I mean, Danny at the time was, you know, he was peaking Danny Harf. I mean, he was doing, you know, double flips and 1080s, and he was like, he was probably at the kind of like one of his, I don't want to say the apex, but definitely one of the highest parts of his riding abilities. And we had just got done watching That's It, That's All, like the big Travis Rice movie that Brain Farm did. And it was like this really cool, like amazing documentary with, you know, production value, and it was Red Bull, and it was just huge. And so I remember wanting to do something big, because that was always my goal, was like, how do I do what the other filmmakers are doing and do it in wakeboarding? And even if I'm still not at the level that Ron is at or Justin's at, but I still want to do what I can in my own, you know, with my stamp on it. And so Danny said, hey, well, you know, we watched this movie together. I remember Dad was like, Danny, you have to watch this movie. That's It, That's All. It's Travis Rice. Like, you just got to watch it and just like, let's do this, you know? And we get so excited, the economy crashes, and we're like, dang it. You know, like Danny Harf is Danny Harf. It's like, there's no stop to support. Probably if anybody was going to get support, it's Danny. I mean, he had the doors. I mean, he could open any door, you know? And so we like had all this intention to do this, and we went out and spent months, and we kind of just started filming, you know, a trailer essentially to kind of say Defy. It was a trailer, and it was awesome. We shot all at Blue Lake, and the original Blue Lake from Defy, and we, you know, just did crazy helicopter things. And the goal was to hit that backside wrap 9, which at the time I think was pretty legit. I know the kids are crazy now with like the stuff they can do off the wake, but at the time it was really about double ups, you know, to get the lift to do something that technical.
This is pre G23.
This is like, he's on a 230, I want to say. And so it was like, you know, backside, you know, 7s all day, but that backside 9 was a, you know, it was a big trick, you know? And so, we got it. And then we put that trailer out, and we're like, hey, trying to find sponsors here. And so, and that movie was one of the things that it took a while to get it off the ground. And I know that a lot of that was because of the economy, but things started clicking into place. You know, Danny was doing Danny stuff, which is inventing tricks and double flips and crazy stuff. But then the riders started joining in, and then Fox got on board, and we had, you know, it was like doors kept opening. Monster got involved, and they're like, huge budget. Like, they're like, we'll give you, you know, say it was a $50,000 budget, but then we'll pay for, like, that'll be your, I want to say that was like the financial money to put towards the film. But then they said, but we'll pay for Australia, Mexico, a monster rate, like all this other stuff. Like, we'll just take care of that. And I'm like, so it's plane tickets and lodging and all. I mean, it was insane. So we got to do the tow-in thing in Ballina.
All right, economy ain't that bad then. If we're getting 50 racks.
Well,
plus.
Recession-proof, people don't stop buying their energy drinks even if they can't put gas in their car.
That's very true.
I'm like guilty as charged. So it's pretty bad. But anyway, so it was like Ballina with tow-in at Ballina, and with Watkins and Watson and Kevin Henshaw and Shane. It was like, I mean, every part of that whole movie, from Shane throwing his board, like, throws it over his shoulder and it sticks in the sand. Stuff like that was like, what? And Danny literally, I mean, the crazy thing is everything we did, we had setbacks. Danny hurt his back, right, while we were filming Defy. And then he hurt his shoulder and had to get shoulder surgery. And so we're literally, I remember there's a scene in Defy where my buddy Ben Lee, who was a RN nurse, and he, you know, we frisbee golf with Dan. He's one of my best friends, and he's close to Danny too at the time. And Danny has this just monster caterpillar or whatever of stitches or staples, I think, or stitches. Can't remember, but Ben Lee being a nurse, he's like, all right, dude, well, we're going to pull these out or whatever is time. Like he basically got him ready to then get on an airplane and go to Australia to do toe-ins.
Yeah, I think in the movie you said it was like 2 weeks after.
Yeah, it was like a couple weeks. It was crazy. Like, but he wasn't ready. Yeah. He had like a chicken wing where he's like, he wasn't supposed to like do anything. And I remember, Carolyn, his wife now, but at the time girlfriend was like, just don't let him get hurt. I'm like, I'll do my best, but he's literally getting towed in on waves, so I have no idea what's going to happen. But Danny, in total Danny fashion, like Watson, of course, just like everything he does is just like, it's like perfect and style and on the whips and stuff. And then Danny comes flying in. First whip of the trip, he does essentially like it's a snowboard. It's almost like his backside 9, but I think he did a backside nose grab, backside rodeo 7, re-entry. It was like his first thing he did on the toe-in.
Yeah.
And then it was on. Like, we're like, oh my gosh. Like it was, I think we were there for a couple days. And I remember that, like, that was, I can't believe through Danny being hurt and surgery and setback after setback after, I mean, it was just like everything was, it was like we'd have these big milestones and the whole movie hung on Danny being Danny. And if Danny's hurt, then we don't have a movie.
Yeah. And
every time he would get hurt because he's pushing it constantly. He's hit like 2,000 double ups for that movie or something. Literally that's 6 weeks or that's, we're not filming, and this movie's about Danny. And so there's a lot of like high highs. I mean, the highest of highs and then the lowest of lows. And we went through that together because my livelihood was hanging on that movie too, because I was all in. I didn't have really anything else. And so the money we're bringing in is keeping me going while I'm trying to keep, helicopters flying and Danny's doing his part and trying to heal and somehow, dude. And I would say that like Monster Rail, all the athletes involved were just genuinely stoked to be a part of Danny's film.
Seemed like it.
It was incredible.
Kind of watching it seemed like it.
They were all in. Everybody was all in on Danny. Like, I think that was the thing is Radar Lake, Paul O'Brien with Ronix, it was like 2 seasons in a row. We went up there 2 summers in a row to do 2 different things. And it was like, everyone's all in on Danny and Danny still came through, but then so did Dean, Dean Smith with the biggest stuff into that pool gap and Ruck. And I mean, everybody did crazy things. Chad, like every Parks, like everybody that was a part of Defy. And what was so cool is like Benny G was so close with Danny and Benny G and Danny were like style guys, right? So he's like, well, Benny G, you got to be in this. So we went to Mexico and we had Watson, Shane, and Benny G.
That's when Benny G almost got killed by the plane?
Yes. Yes. So, right. So if we're going, let's just talk about Mexico.
We're here.
Okay. So it's like, we're in Mexico. We're like, that trip was crazy because we went to, Carlos, I want to say, maybe had this compound on the other side of the border. And he put on a wakeboard competition and he paid everybody to be there. Gave us all money just to be there. So he paid all the athletes whether you won or not. Plus there's a purse. And so we all went there and all the athletes rode in the competition, which was a little pool thing. And then we had the rest of the week just to film. And so we went out the rest of the week and Steve Hahn was there. He's a photographer buddy. And we're all just doing a thing. Brent Brinkerhoff, another buddy of mine, was helping me film. And it was like P2 because I didn't have, at the time, we're still no budget. So it's like shooting on P2, trying to get money for a film camera and stuff. And again, we're building this movie on a P2, like shooting 720 just because that's what we could afford.
Yeah.
And then Paul would build some crazy stunt at Radar. And then I got a film camera for one of the angles and then I had P2 for the others. We had a chopper with Chopper Dave to fly. But my point, everywhere we went, it was like things just kind of fell into place. So one of the things is going to Mexico was like, hey, they're like, we got a plane. I'm like, okay, cool. So
we're airborne, baby.
We're airborne. So I'm like literally like 30 minutes, 45 minutes away by air to fly to the lake, which is this beautiful lake. I want to say, I can't even remember what it was called now. It's crazy. It's been so long, but most beautiful area around this lake, like rolling hill mountains and stuff. And we drop in on the plane and it's just a sheer glass. And I remember the guy, the pilot, and I didn't really understand him. This is not a tease or a knock. He had a little bit of a lisp, and he also didn't speak any English. And so it's just him and I on comms, and I don't understand him. He doesn't understand me. Well, somehow he went down and like 80 miles an hour, whatever, touched a wheel on the water. And it's kind of like an ultralight Cessna. It's an ultralight brand, but it's a Cessna looking plane. So it's like tiny. I don't know how I even fit. And plane like almost went in. Like we almost died. Right. And it just goes, and it like shoots up. And he's like, and he says in this very broken accent, that was accident. Right. So I'm like, and I'm sitting here just going, okay, dude, like, okay, yeah, just keep flying. So like, you know, but we're here. So like, what are we going to do? So then all of a sudden we see the boat, you know, starting up and I think it was Benny G might've gone first. I don't remember exactly, but we're buzzing. Essentially we're doing buzzing passes, you know, like, cause we had a plane, like you can't cruise next to them. So it's like anticipation. It's either a cool go at them or come from behind or whatever, but you're going at slowest you can go, like 70. Boat's going 20. I don't know.
You need
like,
Randall out there riding.
Yeah, then you'd have then more time with him. So anyways, Benny G's like, so I want to say that the whole setup, we had multiple cameras. We had GoPros and at the time, like whatever we could get. But I want to say Danny's driving chase. I want to say that Watson's driving towboat. Benny G's like, he's the rider. So like, and he goes out and just does this monster method out in the flats. And it's like, and we're coming right at him. Right. And so Danny is like, wait a minute, this plane is literally feet off the water. And Danny, I think, kind of panics. So as Benny G does the method and lands, the plane's right there. So Danny swerves because of the plane right behind Benny G. But it's like he didn't know what to do. There's a plane. And I'm filming this whole thing. And then I remember just seeing all the different camera angles, because like Watson just looks at the camera angle and just like, dude, what is going on? It's like only in Mexico, dude. Like just crazy, you know, just whatever, like the things you hear about, the craziest things happen in Mexico, right? Like you're like, well, that makes sense. A plane. And then we the next day we had a chopper and then we got all this other killer stuff. So it was just like, yeah, nuts.
And that's not like when I was talking to Trevor Maurer, when he went down to Mexico to film for some of the stuff he's done, same stories, different crazy stuff, but just, you know, south of the border, it gets a little bit like a little hairy,
Wild West, like literally like
that though.
Anything goes. And you're just, and that was cool too, because we had like this retention ditch, like on the property that probably not very good, clean water to be in, but Danny got like towed by a jet ski down the trench.
There's a clip I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Jet ski at a winch spot. He was riding this wall ride on a boat board.
And it's all the people, all these like fans.
Tons of people line the shores.
With lights on it and stuff.
Yeah, just a wild, I don't know.
But it was like so sick because like Danny, like how cool just to show his abilities, right? Like,
well, he didn't have to go do that, right? Like,
no, but it was like, let's go grind this ditch. And I mean, I think it was one of those things where, you know, Danny always gave liberty to the other athletes. He didn't flex his limelight on anybody. He was so stoked, I think, to have all of his friends in his movie, and they were stoked to be a part of it. But then they also were like, no, Danny, this is just about you. Like, because other guys could have, Shane and I think Watson were there too. They could have hit that thing, but they were like, I think it was like, Danny, just go ahead. And it ended up being like a rad thing just to have in that story was him just blowing his board up. And it was like, so yeah, just crazy stuff, dude. We literally like get out of Mexico and like survived, and that was cool. And it was crazy. I feel like the whole process of Defy was like hanging on by a thread almost on every aspect, but whether it's the financials or life in general with helicopters and planes, or just him staying healthy, you know, but everything came together. I want to say that like the greatest moment of Defy, which meant so much, was a couple things led up to it, but we got a red camera from Tony Augustinac, who was a kid, just Danny Harf fan. I met him, filmmaker guy, brought a red camera. He had one of the first red epics, and he's like, here, you guys use it. So we got to use it for Fox, that section, which is why the Fox section looks so good, is we had the red camera, the red epic camera on that section. We shot the intro, we shot the outro.
Is that the Blue Lake or whatever?
Yeah, Blue Lake. Okay. We shot at Radar Lake for part 2. Which Danny had 2 blown ACLs. Like he was double braced, and he still did like this long, 270 rotating rail thing on that. And that's all he could physically do because he was like, his body was done. He was like, he had hit so many double ups trying to land all those double flips and landed so many double flips. It was like every time he landed a crow 7 or a double flip or whatever, it was like 1080s and all the different things. It was like, dude, every time he landed something, it was another massive, celebration for all of us, all of his friends, his fans, me, him, because it furthered his being Danny Harf, iconic, like legendary status.
Yeah.
Status is like, dude. So then after all of that, the most highs and lows, we're at Wake Awards that year before Defy. I don't want to say it was a few months before Defy came out. So it would have been 2011 Wake Awards maybe. And Danny and I showed the trailer. And Spencer Norris, who's an incredible filmmaker, a buddy of mine, was like helping me in the dungeon with Defy. Like he was like my assistant editor, moral lifter upper. He was just, he just means so much, but he really helped me. There's so much heavy lifting to make a film. But anyway, so we go and we show the trailer, and we got a standing ovation. And it was like one of the greatest. It was almost bigger than the movie succeeding, was to show the trailer and everybody lost it.
Yeah.
And it was I think it was the greatest moment of my career. I mean, it was just, and then the next Wake Awards was like, we won movie of the year, writer section of the year.
You backed it up.
And then we also got, YouTube video of the year with Fox. We did a Battle Falls thing with Reed, and we won web video of the year, like all in one.
Stacked them up.
Dude, it was a great, I mean, but it wasn't about the awards, but when you work for,
it's the recognition. It's
12 years at that time,
yeah.
And you're just giving your whole life to something. That was kind of the thing. So he asked about budget.
Well, so first one, favorite project, we got that. The way he worded it, Sean, most profitable project for you, Sean Kilgus.
Okay, so dang it.
I'm glad you didn't. I wasn't gonna let
I wonder
you
if he's
duck
like,
that one, but
you kind of owe me, so you, Danny, I have no money.
Like,
for the record, I have no money. I need another IOU. Anyways, I want to, it's for sure Defy, because a couple things. One is we are still in the space where we could sell a physical, physical hard copy. So we had a Blu-ray DVD combo pack, right? So we did, which because DVDs still are around and people weren't quite Blu-ray and they didn't know which way it was going. And I guess apparently some dark industry decides that. But anyways, so, and so we were wondering what was going to happen, but we did pre-sales. And so we needed that money. That money went to finishing Defy. So say we raised $30,000 or something like that in pre-sales, all of that money went to finish Defy, to pay for helicopters and stuff, because we just didn't have the budget. We had I think Defy, I want to say, raised maybe $60,000 in cash from sponsors.
Okay.
But then we probably had $100,000 in support, if you think about Radar Lake, or more. Radar Lake times 2, and Mexico and Australia and all these different places. We had so much support from Monster that they gave us value, even if it wasn't cash. So if I had to pay for that trip, it would have been $20,000. Well, they paid for it. So it was still made the movie what it was, but we didn't have physical cash. So music rights and...
Oh, you got music rights?
Oh, yeah. The only...
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Yeah. I mean, because that was at the time we had to in order to be on iTunes.
You're dealing with these big companies going on
and
iTunes,
we're moving into iTunes, so they're like, you have to clear your music. And I'm like, all right. So we did. And that was hard. That was $30,000 to, you know what I mean? And so people don't realize that now. But anyways, so yes, Danny, it was the most profitable movie by far. I mean, maybe we grossed 200, but I spent probably almost a half of that just to make the movie and finish the movie and pay for all the, but.
You remember how many copies were sold?
So we did
physical, I guess physically on iTunes. I don't know.
I don't even know. We've done, I think, 15 or 17,000 downloads on iTunes alone. There was 10,000 Blu-ray DVDs. I mean, It was a massive, but a lot of people doubled up, they wanted both, because at the time it wasn't out yet on iTunes and people wanted the Blu-ray. And, but by far, the best selling movie I've ever made. And even with Prime, next, it didn't do as well.
So if I bought Defy, or maybe I rented Defy last night. I thought I bought it on iTunes. But anyways, on Amazon, Defy's available. Are you getting any money from that if somebody buys it today, or did you sell all the rights?
Funny of that. So the rights this is kind of a bummer. All my digital rights were through a company called The Orchard, and they went under. and they're in some sort of litigation, right? Because multiple producers from all these different sports industries,
Big umbrella.
nobody has gotten paid for years, and the company went bankrupt. And so but yet our movies are still selling. But I can't find who to ask to see, like, so every time they re-up for iTunes, for Amazon, somebody's getting paid. But and it's probably just something where I have to reach out to them, and they'd probably say
They're going to make it really hard for you, but I'm sure you get it
yeah,
done.
probably could.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
I was curious on that because I'm sure it probably gets messy after years and years and years of ownership and rights and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like it did, but
Yeah.
damn, I thought you were getting at least.
No, but
like,
you know, the collective, we made what we could off the movie.
Yeah.
The big stuff came early on, for
of course,
sure.
yeah. The residuals are probably not a ton, but
$100 a month, you know, things like that.
Hey,
but
100
it's
bucks
still,
here,
I
100
mean,
bucks there,
you know what I mean? Groceries and it makes
it
sense.
adds up.
Yeah.
So talk about how many copies. So before we dive more into Defy, because we were kind of getting in there a lot, I still got more questions. I think it's time we spin the LF'n Wheel of Questions presented by Liquid
goodness.
Force. So
The LF'n Wheel of Questions.
Okay, let's go.
How do I reach this without breaking?
you might be able to grab the base down there, but Liquid Force likes to make wakeboarding fun. So let's make this podcast a little bit more fun. Yeah, it should just pop right off there. Yeah, she's pretty durable. So yeah, let's make this podcast a little bit more fun by spinning the LF'n Wheel of Questions. Quick note, Brostock is back. It's happening June 27th, 28th on Lake Lanier in Gainesville, Georgia. So go to brostock.com to learn more. We'll be there, so we better see you guys there. It's going to be all time. Big wakeboard events back. So let's give this thing a spin. We got a lot on here. We got hot take as usual. And then we did some custom ones for you before the show started. So
I'm gonna probably need you to read.
yeah,
this
it's my
to me as
my
I'm old
chicken scratch
aged.
handwriting. So
No,
I will,
it's actually your
nope,
handwriting.
you should run with that. It is
Yeah.
my terrible
I
handwriting.
can't read your handwriting.
Yep.
Ready?
Go for it. Oh, you got to
Oh,
spin
I didn't
harder
know-
than
I
that.
didn't wanna
Yeah,
break
yeah.
it.
No, you
There we
can't
go.
break it. It's
Okay, there
Liquid
we go.
Force Indestructible. Hot take.
Don't know what that means.
It's a hot take, wakeboarding wise. You could say, I got a bunch of examples on my phone that I can pull out, but it's like a controversial take you have about wakeboarding, filmmaking, where if you say it, you'll split an audience in half. They'll be like, "Oh, I hate that," or "Oh, I totally agree."
Oh man, gosh. I mean, I had a lot of hot takes as a filmmaker based on everything from being a boat centric kind of filmmaker.
Yeah.
Like I was definitely wanted boat over everything else. I wasn't a fan that wakeboarding was crushed by wake surfing and that the companies were a part of that.
Ooh, I like this.
Especially
I like where you're going with
especially the
this.
boat companies. And I understood, like, for them, they're like, how are we gonna sell more boats? But they didn't. And I look at it as like almost looking at other sports like surfing and snowboarding. And I'm sure there's a lot of this in there we just don't know about because we're not close enough, right? But I look at these sports that are still viable as their own sport, that their sport is core and they don't give up on their sport and sell it out to the highest bidder. And I felt like wakeboarding got sloughed off to wake surfing because there's more money in it.
This is a
And
great
then-
hot take, by the way.
And now, I mean, and I think that it's coming back around in a good way. We have foiling and stuff. And so there's now a bridge that I like because I tried foiling and I think it's fun. And I see like Noah Flegel and Grubb and these guys that are just incredible. And I think that it's cool that there's something else they got back from losing the support for wakeboarding. But I think that the boat companies, and I'm sure, again, it just comes down to sales. They're like, wakeboarding might have been dying. I don't know because I didn't want to admit that wakeboarding may have been dying,
Yeah.
right? Skateboarding, if you watch the Bones Brigade documentary, like ebbed and flowed for 50 years.
It had cycles.
And there was times where it died
Yeah.
and it was resurrected.
Tony
through-
Hawk's career, it lived
Yeah.
and died like 4 separate times.
Exactly, where he wasn't getting paid and then he's making more money than anything. And so
Yeah.
I think that was probably my biggest thing is I didn't like the way how quick the boat companies shifted and pivoted away from wakeboarding and it was I felt it was preemptive. I don't think that they were forced to, and I don't know why they couldn't have done both.
That's such a good question, and I'd love to speak to some of the people on the back ends who made those decisions because it's like a great hot take. This is a great one, by the way, and I totally agree with it. And it's a fascinating point because it's like we ditched a sport, a true sport with a core culture,
Well,
a
it brought the
community.
industry what it was. I mean, without like water skiing did it first, right?
Sure.
Then wakeboarding came up, and it like maybe in a way it crushed water skiing to a degree because all the new participants weren't getting on water skis; they wanted to wakeboard.
Yeah.
And so, but now wakeboarding is up in the X Games, and it's doing all these things. It's blowing up in the early 2000s, and it was a huge sport, worldwide sport. And so the boat companies are making crazy money now. Instead of doing water ski boats, they're doing wakeboard boats. Now they're doubling their price. They're making a ton of money on these new boats.
Yeah.
And it was good for everybody, good for business, good for everybody. Right. And so, but the sport, like wakeboarding was a sport. It is a sport.
Yeah.
And it was just as much a sport like skateboarding or snowboarding for me. And so I was like, why are they not continuing to support and push and like, hey, let's not lose our roots. I mean, and maybe it's because I came up as a wakeboarder. I never water skied, but like, I was like, no, these are our roots, you guys. Like this is the sport that gave all of us an opportunity. Why would we turn our backs on it just to go now wake surf? It's like, that doesn't make any sense. You can do both. Or you can have people that are just really into wake surfing and that's their sport. But wakeboarding should have still been able to be its own sport and be still supported because, and what's crazy to me, being that I'm so far on the outside now, is I look in and I'm like, these kids are still ripping. And guess what? They're ripping harder than ever.
Yeah.
And they're better than they've ever been. And this sport, it's like, it's exciting as a filmmaker to look at it and be like, man, what would it be like to make a movie now? You know? And so I'm glad to see that at least the brands are still supporting the wakeboarders because they deserve it. You know, they're working super hard and it takes so much for them to be here.
Yeah,
you know?
I wish that there was a little bit more nurturing of the culture and a little bit less turning the back on of the actual sport of wakeboarding for the hobby of wake surfing. Obviously you're naive to think that the boat companies aren't going to go where the money's at, right? Like, or any company for that matter. But you kind of got to have a backbone and be like, no, like wakeboarding is what brought us here. Yes, wake surfing is going to sell more boats, but like there's got to be a way you can do a little bit of both. And it felt like maybe there was a lot of giving up on wakeboarding. But I don't know. I feel at least a small resurgence right now. I'm pretty tapped in, I would like to think. So it feels good. It seems like some more people are kind of diving back into wakeboarding and it's becoming more of a thing that there's some more support for. So,
well, what's funny is like, if you think about trends, and now that I'm as old as an old tree, I start seeing, it's funny to see kids wearing Nirvana shirts. And I remember I went, when I was in high school, went to see Nirvana, like, and I remember making fun of my parents making fun of me in high school because I'm like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, blah, 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 thinking I'm discovering this new music.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, that was our music.
been around, buddy.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, dang. And then, but for us, it was new and it was cool because we, whatever. But then I see all the kids now are like rocking what we were rocking. So I kind of think like maybe a lot of people got away from action sports kids. Like it used to be, that's what, at least when my generation, it was the X Games. Like that's where it came from, as Generation X. We were all adrenaline junkies. And Parks Bonifay won the X Games when he was like 14. I mean, everybody was about doing these sports. And so for me, I didn't know anything else. If I was mountain biking, it was downhill mountain biking in Washington. It was dangerous. It was crazy.
It was snowboarding without a helmet.
It was flying off cliffs. It was
shit,
everything. And so it was all about adrenaline. And I know that like, that was the culture that's all I understood for everybody around me for 2 decades or longer. For my life, it was always about adrenaline sports. And then now, or like the last several years, it's like, social media, things have changed. Kids aren't out and about. They're not doing the action sports. And then when you have wake surfing, which is not an adrenaline sport. Now, I know there's kids that are incredible at it, but it's not, the risk and the thing isn't there.
Yeah,
like
you're 9-shove, bud. Like you're not going to get hurt.
Well, you're not going
Nothing's
to, like you might get hurt in some capacity, but you're not going to hook an edge at 40 and get blown up. And that's one thing that was like snowboarding, wakeboarding at the high level could respect each other because it was like, you can get smoked, you know? And I had my concussions. I got hurt all the time I actually still get hurt all the time, still doing what I love to do. But all of the things I love to do is adrenaline sports and action sports. And so I think action sports are coming back because they're trending now because they've been gone. Yeah. Like there's always been the core people or the old timers like me, but I think they're coming back. And I think foiling helps that because you got guys that are like maybe they're my age or 48 and they like, dude, I'm too banged up to wakeboard anymore. I love it, but my body just says no. But what can I do that's cool feeling that gets me back on the water? And foiling's kind of like that for a lot of guys, you know?
If it's going to be anything, foiling over wake surfing, I totally agree.
Totally.
But yeah, I think skateboarding kind of tells that story of the ebbs and flows of, I mean, you'd start with Dogtown and you had a huge, massive upswing and then a downswing and then an upswing. So it's like, you can kind of see action sports through the story of skateboarding. I feel like it tells it pretty well. So great hot take. I love that one. We got a bonus LF'n wild card from the crew at Liquid Force. We got something a little bit different. So Kevco, a long time ago,
I love Kevco,
brought me an original premiere ticket from Ticketfly. Don't know what that is, but it's the general admission ticket to Defy.
Dude, that is so rad that he has that, because Kevco is a huge part of Defy, and he helped us write our. He was kind of like a producer for Defy. Like he was a creative producer, because he helped write story and script, and he helped us polish.
Yeah. Danny's
the athlete. I'm the filmmaker, but
we're trying to tell a story too.
This is a story that really needed to be encapsulated and embodied in what we were doing. And Kevco was like, he got to be, 30,000 feet. And that was his passion. He was he, at the time, I think he might've been either coming out of being the editor at wakeboarding, but he was, that's his space. And what was so crazy is now looking back 15 years later plus, Kevco's like so passionate about water sports in general, coming up from where he did with 3-event and show skiing and just the things. And he loves this stuff. And so the fact that he has that ticket doesn't surprise me, but it's awesome that he has that ticket, because he was there that night and it was such a big night for all of us to spend that time together.
And he has the thought to save shit like this. That's what I like.
Yeah.
I like when
Thank
people have
God
the thought
he
in the
does,
moment to save, not, drink a couple beers, throw the ticket away. Ah, shit.
Yeah.
So where was this premiere? In Orlando? Do you know?
Well, I know, I can't remember.
Or were there several? I don't know.
Well, the main one was like the was it called the Beachum or something?
It was.
Yeah, so it was the Beachum, and it was like, I remember, dude, the funniest thing. So at like maybe 10 o'clock, I mean, we have this raging rad wakeboard film premiere. We're like, yeah, and then like you get me done with the movie, and it's like, well, of course we're gonna stay and have drinks and celebrate and stuff. And they're like, no, you guys gotta go. And we're like, what? And it turns into a full-blown booty club. And it's like, they're like, get out. This is no longer your place.
This place, the Beachum?
Yeah. It was like the weirdest thing. We're like, oh, okay. We're like rolling up the banners. We're like, get out of here. Like we thought we were going to be able to hang out and enjoy we're like, no, you guys got to go. Your type don't belong here. It's like, oh, okay. Well, so it was pretty funny.
Okay. So I got to follow up on that. So it was at the Beachum in Orlando, which I wonder if that's still in business. We'll see.
I'm sure it's traded hands like everything else.
It's got a bunch of different names that it went through. Do you remember the date and time this movie was at?
I mean, it would have been probably, time of day. I mean, I could say 7 p.m. and probably
yeah, it was right. Okay. 7 p.m. Do you remember what day?
It would have been, I want to say it would have been like the 17th or 18th.
Holy shit, dude. Yeah.
Because it would have been, 17th. Yeah, because I want to say that we did the premiere in Seattle the weekend before, which is right around my birthday.
Never been.
And then we did, that's crazy. I actually got it right.
I would have never been able to remember any of that, even if it was my movie.
Smokes. That might be all I remember, though. That may be it. So,
well, that's all I could quiz you on it. So
wow.
we're 3 for 3 on that. That's so we can go ahead and put the LF'n wheel of questions back.
I might just put it down because unless you need it up there for display purposes.
If you could put it up there, because shout out Liquid Force. So yeah, we were kind of dogging wake surfing, but Liquid Force, there are brands out there that do truly support wakeboarding. So need to support those.
And that's the point. Is like I said, I think one of the people right now, like I got to do a cool project with Noah Flegel for Wakeboarding Magazine, and like an editorial type piece where it's story driven. And dude, it's like watching him do what he does as a foiler, as a surfer, skim style and surf and wakeboarding. I'm like, dude, you can do it all. And if you can be like him, it's that to me bridged that gap where I was like, you know what? He's like a waterman entirely.
Truly, because he can surf too, like a real surfer.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is he can go out there and hang with the best. I mean, that's every one of those sports is someone's entire talent pool of what they hope they can do.
Yeah.
And he can do all of it on the A-list level. That's insane.
It really is.
Like to be like a premier toe-in foil guy to be the guy that's behind the boat, be premier behind the boat, like strapped and strapless, to be the wakeboarder that can bust like, you know, some of the sickest style.
I think he got 4th at Moomba this year.
That's what I'm saying.
I'll fact check that.
But
like
he's so busy doing so many things.
Spends most of his time in Hawaii. He's not wakeboarding in Hawaii.
Oh, dude, it's incredible, man. And that's what I'm saying is I think, and I'm not saying like, you know, when you talk about hot take and you think about like drama or negative, whatever, I was negative. I was probably one of those people who was heartbroken as a wakeboard filmmaker that I felt like the industry shifted away from supporting wakeboarding to supporting surfing. And I was super mad about that because my whole life was wakeboarding movies and I love wakeboarding. And I was like, I don't understand. Why wouldn't they be able to do both? But you know, but everybody had to adapt, right? The brands and obviously all the companies that, you know, Hyperlight and Liquid Force and everybody's they have to do it all and sell it all in order for them to stay viable too. So it makes sense. And so I'm thankful now seeing that they are still doing it all.
Exactly.
Right. That they're supporting wake surfers and they're supporting wakeboarders.
There's still pro wakeboarders out there.
Right. And now that I'm an old timer, there's foiling and now they all make foils and it's fun. Yeah. And so I think a little bit is that maturing process too for me. It's easy to be bitter when it's
easy to throw stones as the core wakeboarder when things are changing.
Right.
It's like, well, change is going to happen.
Change is going to happen. It's always
so you just got to adapt to it.
For sure.
All right, so let's kind of dive back into Defy a little bit. So was the release pushed back for Defy a little bit? The initial scheduled release?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that is based on editing is I mean, and I would say that like, how do I put this? Filmmaking for me has always been something that I didn't feel like I was exceptionally gifted for. Definitely when people called me out and said I was a horrible filmer in the beginning, I did not think that I would be doing this for a living, 25 years later. It's crazy. But I loved storytelling. And so when I saw an amazing story in a snowboard film or any other documentary, I remember just feeling like, oh, I just want to do that. I don't know how. I suck at this. I want to tell stories, but I don't know how. I was so excited. So every movie I made, I would introduce a little story, a little bit of behind the scenes, like from early movies like Butter Effect or even, Drive. A lot more story, like interviews about the riders of their passion. And then Defy was very much more in story, but still in action sports. And Prime was even more that. But like, I just wanted to tell stories and I wanted it to be like, I wanted to learn how, but I didn't know how. So I was intimidated, Forgive me, dude, I got sidetracked.
No, you're good. You were just talking Defy and the process of telling stories.
Yeah. So sorry, forgive me. So part of that deep dive into storytelling is like, not only are you managing terabytes of content of just clips and you're trying to go through thousands of clips because that's how we filmed. I'm not saying they do it like that now, but when I was doing it,
you're stacking.
Rusty wants to ride 7 times a day. And, it's just funny. Like, that's how it was. And I would just go. I lived with these guys. So we'd film all the time. And I didn't do a good enough job, I should have, of going through the footage as we shot it and just pulling the selects knowing we're not going to use this stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'll edit when I get there. When I get to the end of months go by and I'm like, I should be doing, I'll wait. Well, then you wait and then you're like, spend a month just literally like pulling selects and building out what you're actually going to use for this film. Not only that, I wasn't really a filmmaker. I didn't go to film school. And so I didn't understand how much I didn't know how to write a script. And
you didn't know how much you didn't know.
I didn't know what I didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know what I didn't know. And all I took was inspiration from other industries' films and films I wanted to make, or watch Justin's films or watch Ron's films and be like, man, should I make a funny movie? Like 12 Honkies was my favorite film of all time. Just so funny and great story and just so well done. Or do I do more story, like more serious about the sport and stuff? And then there's the visual side of filmmaking with like Ron's movies were poetically beautiful film movies, always 16 millimeter, awesome. And then you have Justin introducing these, I don't know if it's called a Pelican. I can't remember the name of the camera that he had for the, not Before the Truth.
The only thing I know is a red.
What was it called? What was the movie before? Oh gosh, dude. Team video for Liquid Force.
Relentless.
Relentless.
Oh, look at that, Paul. Okay. Stuck to myself on that
Justin Justin honored me to let me be a part of Relentless just to help him because there was a lot to do. And he brought in these crazy West Cam or something, some sort of slow-mo. I can't remember what it's called now, but it wasn't a Phantom. It was something similar, but I remember that was like he introduced that to our sport. And it had been done like, in other sports, like the girls skateboard videos and other things that were like the cool slow-mo kickflip stuff. And like, I think it was where they had that slow motion. I think that was a film camera actually.
With the explosion.
Kickflips before that movie. So they might have had an explosion scene in that movie, but that was when they had the green screen boards and they were invisible skating around. But that movie had like slow-mo stuff. And I remember Justin is probably the most creative cinematographer I've ever known in wakeboarding for sure. So, he just did groundbreaking stuff. That's all he did is like the next thing that no one's done.
Yeah.
For filmmaking.
Turning over the stones.
Yeah. I mean, Ron was incredibly creative and talented and just like, wow, so cool. And Justin was like this pioneer of, but it was generational too. Like
yin and yang.
Yeah, because Ron was the 90s generation coming up and then Justin's like the 2000s on. Bame was in there too. He was so polished and incredible filmmaker, still is. And then there was me. And I don't really know where I fit into any of to compare or to say what was but I just wanted to, I wanted to be like all of those guys. Yeah. And I also wanted to be like the snowboarding filmmakers. And so Defy was like, I wanted to do all the things. I had helicopters, I had red camera, I had some Phantom camera in there. We had production value that I'd never had before. I'm not saying other people hadn't, but I was like, I've seen that's it, that's all now. This film exists in snowboarding, so I want to do it for Danny. That was what we tried to do with Defy. It was like, we have to, of course we have a helicopter doing this while another one's doing this. And I just wanted to bridge the gap of like, I can make an iconic wakeboarding film with the highest production, and story and cool, artsy and, crazy stories in Mexico and just kind of everything. I don't know if I even got that right, but.
No, we were kind of wondering why I was backed up, but you had a lot of editing.
Oh yeah, gosh, dude.
I mean, you answered it though.
You keep pulling back, but a lot of it is that, I struggled. Okay. So because I think I lacked confidence in storytelling, but I wanted it so bad, but I didn't have the confidence in myself to tell a story. I didn't have that, like, I am a good filmmaker, therefore I'm just going to dive in. I struggled with that confidence, and so.
And realize it in the time that you didn't just put something together and was like, okay, it's good. You were like, in the moment, did you realize you didn't maybe have the confidence? Like, well, I guess self-realization, you're like, I don't have this.
Yeah. Or it's just like, I'm more up against the wall of my anxiety or struggle with my own like confidence to like dive into how to make this.
It's like a wall.
Dude, it was a creative block. But things would click and then boom, the door would blast open and then a whole sequence of pieces of the movie would fall into place that made it amazing, but it really took some sort of breakthrough. And I think I want to, Spencer Norris, like he was right there in the passenger seat really with me. And he was kind of like a big chunk of the editing of that film was just him helping me work through my creative and my struggles to get like the vision of Defy. Danny came up for several weeks and just sat there and we did voice recording stuff, but we also he participated, and my friend DG put us up for A Free Place to Live and we just made the movie, but it took months. It takes months, dude. And then the whole time you're like trying to get music because you're not thinking about the music until you're ready to edit. Well, dude, it takes months to clear music. It's a huge process that people don't understand. And so you're like, do I edit this? But now I'm sold. I can't come off this song. So you just say, I sure hope I get this cleared and I hope I can afford it. Yeah. And, so there's a lot of that. Like people don't understand there's so much stress. And then you're planning a premiere with deadlines. You have to raise money. You're literally like, it almost feels like people are just feeding you food and water because you're so fried and you're working 100+ hours a week. Just health is in the gutter. You're drinking alcohol. You're drinking too much energy drinks. You're not eating right. You're not exercising because you're 100 hours a week on the computer. And maybe, and I don't want to live like that anymore. That's one of the reasons why I stepped away is because it was how I did it, but it probably wasn't the best way to do it that way. But
no matter which way you would have done it, though, you would have probably looked back and gone, "Oh, I wish I would have." Like, well, and, you learn, And
a lot of filmmakers, at least Justin and Ron, and especially Justin and I were really close at that time through those years, and we were in the same place at the same time. But it was just that way. When you're making a movie, you just go in the cave and you don't come out till the thing's done, and then it's premiere night, and you're just a mess, and you're just like, haven't slept for 6 weeks or something crazy, and someone hands you a vodka drink and you're just like, I don't even know where I am right now. Like, we're at this premiere, and it's like greatest nights of your life are those big premiere nights. You got all the writers in town.
Well, it's the payoff.
It's the payoff. Moment. It's the moment, dude. It's like, it doesn't even really matter. I mean, of course it matters the video sells, but you have this live audience seeing a movie for the first time. Nothing like that, dude. Butter Effect was like the breakthrough, where I had Byerly, Danny, Park, Shane, Aaron Reed, Benny G, Keith Lyman. I think there was like 15 writers came to Seattle for the Butter Effect premiere.
Well, and that's your stomping grounds.
That was my hometown. Yeah. And it was, at the time, wakeboarding was huge in Washington. I mean, it was pre-wake surfing, and it was like, that's what people did. And it was a huge crowd. We had like 1,200 people packed this little place called the Showbox, and it was raging amazing. And my buddy Daniel Dietrichs and EJ both helped me do this, and Ben Davis, Ben Lee. Like, I've always had, God bless, I'm so thankful. I didn't know what I had, but I had the most amazing, and still do, these guys that have been in my corner as friends that weren't industry guys. They were just my friends, and they just stuck with me through all of it. And I look back and I'm like, that, I didn't know it, how much God puts people in your life for a reason. And those guys did it. I mean, they were the people that were on the trips with me. I would bring them on the trips to Mexico or crazy things to say thank you. And hey, now go party with these athletes for a week, because it's going to be fun, and we're filming, and it's going to be amazing. And the stories and the things they got to participate in and stuff. But also, they were there when things were bad, and money's bad, and struggle's bad, and they never left, you know what I mean? And they're still there today. It's like, it's crazy.
Truly got your back.
Truly, and and it's crazy to be able to celebrate. One of the greatest things I got to do is put people's names in the credits. I loved that. I loved thanking people, special thanks. I loved that. That was like one of the most special things, when I'd be at the premiere and I'd look over at the person that, especially like Tom and Carol Greetham, the people that picked me up off the dock. I remember not putting their name in the credits. And I remember looking at them and them kind of seeing that their name wasn't in the thank you list. And then it said, and a very special thanks to Tom and Carol. And they're just, dude, tears. And it was like, that was one of the coolest things, is be able to say thank you for helping me. Because I was like this poor kid who didn't have anything. And so everybody that's been a part of that career of making films, like, made it happen. I mean, every writer that helped me, every sponsor, everybody, whether they knew it, whether it was them reaching really far down to help me, or just, oh, whatever, here's a little bit of money, we don't care, it's part of our budget, but whatever, we'll roll the dice, give you a little cash. But, or it was like somebody who like Danny, who dedicated, or Benny G, who let me sleep on a board bag by his couch. Like, I literally had no place to live, and Benny G's like, dude, just stay with me. This is early. This is like pre-Butter Effect, and just trying to make it, dude. Yeah. You know what I mean? Concussion. I mean, this is like early career. And that's the guys that were like, then the guys that I got to like help their careers be what they became. Yeah. Like Benny G and I got to celebrate his career together, because it was like, I'm like, Benny G, you be you, and I'm going to be me. And then it was like, boom, he was Rider of the Year, but it started with me on a couch, like sleeping on a board bag on a floor. You know what I mean? Like,
well, no such thing as a self-made man, right? I did all the way along the way.
And maybe I guess everybody probably can feel that and say that. And for me, it just meant so much, because I think of just all the hard times and how many people like helped me that I never wanted to.
Without asking, I would assume there's a lot of
just people that stepped up,
sticking their neck out.
And then and there's people that just stepped up when I needed help. So I'm so thankful for that.
All right, so we're talking still Defy a little bit, and I have to make a correction. That skate video I was talking about, it's fully flared by Lakai with the explosion behind it. I had to correct that one, because that's an iconic shot.
But are the same filmmaker? Was that Ty Evans?
Has to be, right?
Yeah. Okay. Incredible. That guy is still doing Wow. Go on.
Could be said.
Nat Geo stuff.
So I want to talk about a clip specifically in Defy, and it's Danny Harf's Pete off the double up. It's towards the beginning of the movie, and it's the shot where the helicopter flies in very aggressively, I might add.
Just a little.
And I'm just curious on, like, how do you coordinate that shot? Like, how many tries does that take? Is there, like, it's just, the timing seems like it has to be so perfectly on that with a freaking helicopter.
Right. So I think that that was definitely the part of the filming where we were just kind of looking for those big moments. Obviously a Pete for him is no big deal. And so it was more like, okay, well, how do we do this? What can we set up? And I think that I remember correctly that the shot from the chopper was good, but really, the shot was probably used earlier in the film or a different piece when it was like a push over the trees into the boat coming around the island about to hit a double up. That was the part we used from the helicopter's perspective, right? But then the part that we used for the film, like, was just the BTS essentially, like the shore angle of like screaming chopper past and him getting punted up. Like, that was the cool shot with the audio and just whoa, that was crazy. So really it really kind of like a lot of things just happened because we set things in motion and then we had cameras rolling and then we're like, well, we're using that one because that's cool. That's like gnarly and loud and all that stuff, so we were going for the chopper shot.
Yeah.
And then we end up using the ground shot, which just shows the chopper. So it was kind of funny. Like, I remember Sean Perry made fun of me when we did Prime. He had me come in for a quick interview when he was the editor at Wakeboarding, and the story read, it was like, or something, but it was just like a row of helicopters, like in the shot, and I remember just being like, oh man, I totally earned that, right? Because I was like, I want to make movies like the snowboard, like I said, this big snowboard films, and it was helicopters, and it was how you get the shot, and drones weren't never a thing that I really, and even today, I see what BT does and
I was going to ask
Dave AV. It's incredible. Like, I'm like, dude, that's sick. If I had that for my movies, I would have been like pumped because those shots are incredible.
Yeah.
Like where they follow them and land with them. It's like, boom. And you just feel like you see the bolts like bam. But nothing could get what I could get even now where I could pan on the
where
edge
you have
of
your own physical
full
camera.
ability, and I can
Airborne.
I can be at like a 90 or 100 on the zoom and tracking an athlete, and water's flying into the lens, into the chopper, and the shot is just insane. Like a drone can't do that even now. Like I'm not saying like you'd risk a lot of money to have a drone that could do that could have a, 2 operators and a, telephoto and just all the things it would
to
take.
mimic the look. It would be.
And then who's wiping the lens?
Yeah.
This guy. Because I just got smoked. Dude, you got to, like, I've got to tell you some helicopter mishaps. Oh my gosh, there's so many.
You ever fallen out of one? Or you stay strapped?
I stay strapped, dog. Dude, let me tell you a couple stories. You should just preface it with, give me some, like, scary or whatever, plane incident in Defy.
Man, that one.
Ask me, like, what are the scary moments for
Actually.
Or do you have?
We got a Patreon question.
Okay.
That's perfect. And just asking this. So thank you to everybody on the Patreon. Your guys' support is what keeps this podcast going. If you join the Patreon, you get to see who the guests are early. So thank you to everybody on there. We got a Patreon question here from Brandon Judd.
Oh my gosh,
and
I love Judd.
He's going, Sean, sometimes in order to get the shot or the perfect shot, the towboat, chase boat, cameraman, helicopter, and rider all have to get into some precarious situations. Would you give us some insight on this dynamic, and what are some of the sketchiest close calls you've had? So probably some chopper incidences, I would imagine.
Yes, I remember. Gosh, I love Brandon. Hey, Judd. So yeah, I would say that one of the crazier ones, other than that plane incident in Mexico, there was another one in Australia when we were there shooting for Prime, and it was, I want to say Amber Wing was in the water, and she was either getting ready to ride or had fallen, and they were picking her up or something. But we had flown an hour from the airport to location. So, I mean, that's how far we were. I'm not saying he couldn't find a place to land because there's obviously roads and stuff, but that's where we were gassed up, and that's what we had fuel for flight there, flying time to film and flight back. And I remember, the guy was a very talented pilot, considering that I just said, hey, I need you to do these things. Like, I'm used to the guys back home who can do what I need to do, but can you do it? And he's like, sure. And I was like, okay, let's go for it. Of course, like, didn't consider it and get over there. And we're on the Murray River, which is like leads into they call it the Styx, or right, or amongst the Styx or something, which is, what was that called? Forgive me.
I don't know.
Just that area. I can't.
Yeah, it's iconic though.
But it's like the dead trees,
Yeah.
and it's so sick. And so, we ended up like, the Murray River feeds into that. It's all part of that, where the dead trees are and stuff. And so, we're filming there, and it's like Tony Iaccone's like a kid at the time. He's like 15. I want to say it was like Amber and Dean, and I can't remember, Steele, Shota.
Was Watkins there?
Watkins was, but I don't think he was there. He was in, We're Going to Bonnie Doon. There's a movie called The Castle, and it's a movie about Bonnie Doon, and it literally happens in Watkins' home lake is where they made this kooky movie. We watched it in the bar that was like the restaurant bar where they filmed a scene from this actual film, and now we just sang that song for like a week. Anyways, so Watkins wasn't there that day, I don't think. But anyway, so Amber, so we're flying, and back to that, so many tangents, but we're coming in kind of swooping in on her because she's in the water. And I think he was kind of doing like a parallax, kind of like a skidding stop in the air, if you can imagine, like dropping elevation and rotating around. But I think that he didn't have enough throttle to do the move. And what had happened is that we basically rotated around, and the bird fell. Like, we dropped like 10, 15 feet and hit the water. And all it was like, imagine just getting hit by a fire hose. Like, you're just chilling out, and the next thing you know, you're like almost underwater. And I didn't know what was going on because I couldn't see, and it was just this violent, loud sound plus water. So I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if this was the end. But I hear the helicopter rev up and then come up out of the, mess of water and stuff. And I'm like, what in the world just happened? And I remember just looking into the boat, looking at the people, like, which were only 50 feet away or whatever. And Amber's probably 20 feet away, and she's just like ghost white, right? And so I didn't know what happened. I thought we just had like a little bit of downdraft that brought some water up, which happens all the time with a chopper, because when you're moving down the lake in a helicopter, you have like the jet is going like kind of behind you. The turbulence is behind you from the downdraft. But the minute you're standing, now it's going straight down. Well, what happened is he dropped, and basically it kind of went boom, and it like all the water comes flying up while we're trying to get the bird back in the air. And so it was like almost, if you just imagine, and he dropped so much elevation that it like happened in like almost like an explosive fashion. So anyways, that was terrifying because that was the beginning of the day.
Oh, okay, I was going to ask, how long is the reset from that point? Do you guys immediately...
Other than wiping off the camera, it's still working. It's the red.
You're right back to it?
I'm right back in it, dude. Like, I'm like literally drying off the lens and cleaning the lens, trying to get water off the camera, and we're all soaked. And it's like, we got 4 more riders. And Amber's not even ridden yet.
And gas is burning in this bird.
Yeah, and we still don't even know if it's going to make it back. So that was crazy.
Yeah, any other helicopter stories? There's got to be some. Have you ever fallen out?
So I was doing a thing for, I want to say it was a signature series Red Bull, and they had like the Cineflex mounted on the front of the helicopter. But I was there for a day that they were like, oh, this is kind of almost like a media day where it's like, we just need footage, but this isn't the competition that they're filming live or whatever. So I was up there with, I think, a Super 16 or something, and filming with, the cowboy, what was his name? Preston. That was like our main guy for Defy and all this stuff. But, anyways, I fly around all day. We get up at high elevation all over the place. And I'm not proud of this, but we were never harnessed. And I would basically hook a seatbelt through my belt. And it was just like, well, it is what it is. And I didn't know. Nobody, but anyway, so I get done and my belt is open. Like, it had opened up. And so there was no, if all I had done is leaned forward, I would have fallen out of the chopper. And that was probably the thing that, like, if, I didn't know at the time how much more life I wanted to live. And I realized that was one of the things that just made me go, dude, what are we doing? You know, like we need to be careful. Like I didn't know about being careful. You know, at the time it's probably like you're chasing your own, yeah, man, like I'm going to do this. And it's like your own glory. And so you just risk things, you know, and it's, it's kind of like it was just the way it was, you know, and then, but for Prime, I was strapped. I had a harness and changed that. I wanted to be safe.
Seatbelt through the belt loop. That's crazy. I mean, it's better than nothing, right?
It is. And it worked until.
And it makes sense in your head, but it's
right.
also like, wow. Yeah, belt's open anyway. So it's like.
Yeah. So
wow,
close
that's
call.
Crazy.
But, you know, and a lot of it was not like something, oh, wow, I almost fell out. It was after I landed and then I'm like, oh my gosh, what if, you know? And so, man, there was so many, it was more so the things that we are trying to do to push production and with phantom cameras and helicopters and all this stuff to show this machine in unison with this athlete. And it's this, you know, close proximity and all this stuff. And it's like, but then it's just, you just invite so much risk, you know? Yeah. And I realized when I was done, when I was done making movies is when I realized I'm like, what is really next? Like, what am I supposed to do next that's more dangerous or more crazy or more production value? I was seeking production value, but at what cost, you know? And that was part of what I realized. I'm like, I don't think I should do this anymore, you know? And I didn't know how to just make the classic wakeboard film that wasn't a rebuttal to the next big thing. Yeah. I felt like Defy had to be outdone. Defy was the greatest project I'd ever done, and it was done because of the involvement of who was involved and the timing and everything. And then Prime was like, hey, here's a chance. Mastercraft gave me a chance and said, hey, we want you to do it again for us, you know? And I'm like, okay, cool. And so it was like, can I do this even bigger? What can I do to make this more explosive? So then it's like shoot on red, the whole thing, 4K movie, helicopters flying out of our pockets. Like we're going to be like, I mean, just too much, almost like so much that we didn't know really what we were trying to rein in. Yeah.
You just know you wanted to keep going up.
I wanted the epic moments to be so big.
Yeah.
I wanted the wake skate stuff with Reed and Josh Sentmeyer to be like water droplets and Phantom at 2,500 frames where you see these marbles of water flying through the air and they're locked in on a blunt, you know, and you're just like, whoa. I mean, it was stuff that like you envision, and then you're like, I got the camera that can do it, and you get in the position, and then you get these shots, and it's like, and then when you try to make a whole movie like that, it seemed understandable, justifiable at the time, but you don't realize like how far am I from where I should be, or what is the real goal here? You kind of lose sight of what you're doing because you're so kind of, in other things they call it like sight locked. You're so locked in on what you tunnel vision. Yeah. You're so locked in on what you want that you don't see the risks. You don't listen to the risks. You don't think about the what ifs, and you're just like, I can't hear any of this. I don't want to hear this. I'm just gonna.
You're gonna slow me down.
Well, and to a degree, and that goes on in Defy. It wasn't like I wasn't doing the same stuff. It was like I was pushing harder than I'd ever pushed in the past with Defy, and we did it. You know what I mean?
All right. I think before we dive into Prime, because there's Prime is longer than Defy, correct? And there's more riders in it, I think.
Probably.
There's definitely more riders in it because the rider list is massive. So before we dive into that, I think we do the Slingshot Silhouette Challenge presented by Slingshot.
Oh my gosh.
And this is obviously from Prime.
Sometimes I forget that I'm doing a podcast right now because I just feel like I'm having a great conversation, and it's like
success. We're succeeding if we do that.
It's cool because it's you don't get an opportunity to share like a huge part of your life.
Well, I always say it off camera is, when's the last time you talked to somebody face to face for an hour without any phones or screens or computers or TVs? Yeah. It doesn't happen anymore. So it's like, you get in like the zone, and it's awesome. It's refreshing.
This is going to be like people going on those unplugged vacations, and when there's no Wi-Fi and there's that's what I'm saying. There's going to be like this counterculture of action sports. People don't have cell phones anymore. They have flip phones, and they just like leave them in the truck, you know, and
Yeah.
you're just like, you don't have to document anything. Cause it's like the less you show is actually cooler.
Yeah, and you make fun of the
I'm
people who
off
are on
the
the
grid,
phone.
bro. I'm
Yeah.
off the grid.
I
you
like
know,
it. I like it.
Pay him more.
Okay, so this is
dude.
presented by Slingshot, and I printed out a photo. It's black and white, obviously.
Wrathy.
Toner is low.
I can already tell because I thought
I thought you were
This
gonna
is
get
the
this one,
most-
but then you said you were a little worried.
Well,
You
no, but
said-
because that whole setup with the crane, the chopper, and that's Wrathy. I know
Yeah, it
that
is Wrathy.
pose, and that was Wrathy doing a cab 9.
what do you know what brand board he's on?
Byerly.
Damn. Okay. I
'Cause
mean,
he was-
you should get this, but the way you said you were nervous at the beginning,
Well, no, I didn't know.
I
I
was a
didn't
little
know
worried.
what we were talking about, like silhouette. That
Yeah.
is an iconic
I guess the
moment for
prime
me
thing
because
here
I
doesn't really
used
help.
that image. I think it's on the trailer. And
This is the cover photo of the trailer.
thumbnail, yeah,
The thumbnail,
so,
whatever you want
yeah.
to call it. So,
So I'm just used to
maybe a
seeing it.
layup there, but I mean, it was, I don't know, Wrathy.
Well, dude, I mean, Wrathy, dude.
Wrathy, dude.
So if we're gonna get into Prime, I don't want to like. That's what's crazy. So it was so easy to.
Thank you to Slingshot for that,
Yeah, thank you, Slingshot.
by the way.
So it was so easy to dismiss Prime's at least achievements, even if I missed, and I'm not going to put any responsibility for mistakes or anything on anybody but myself. You know, a lot of it was, I think when there's an expectation that you have to make a bigger film than Defy. It's like, how do you do that? And I mean, I told you, like, it was a confidence issue. Like, how do I, Sean Kilgus, go make a better movie than Defy when Defy felt like it was a gift? A gift, yeah, it took hard work and it was difficult seasons, but the floodgates opened when they needed to, and it all worked out. And it was a victory to celebrate Danny Harf. Like, and I thought that was amazing that I got to be the person for that. And so when Prime came around, it was like, how do I do this better? Well, you know, so of course you kind of go, someone's like, here's an opportunity financially, and here's the resources you need. What's it going to take? Here's the resources. And you're like, well, man, someone says, go do what you love to do, but do it for us and do it better than the other one. And you're like, well, dang, okay, well, let me see if I can. And so a lot of it is like, it wasn't like, I didn't feel disgenuine, if that's the right word. I felt like I was doing what I was gifted for, what I had worked for. I felt like I was a filmmaker. I'd worked my way up to get to that point. And so to get an opportunity for Mastercraft to go make Prime, it was like, okay, well, yeah, then let's go for this. Let's make it huge. And we had Lake Ronix, like, which didn't exist before.
Yeah.
So there was big things happening at that same time. So it felt like another, you know, kind of like you have this moment in time where everything is happening for that reason. The right people are involved, the right lakes are being built. There's all the same things happening. And so Prime had the same, you know, not as maybe as deeply personally connected like it was with Defy with Danny,
Yeah.
but there was passion because everybody involved with Prime was stoked. I mean, all the writers were stoked. I was stoked. Filmmakers were stoked that
They're
were
part of
helping
a
me.
big budget, big movie production, and they saw Defy, and they knew that you're involved.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're like, "All right, let's run it back." And I want a piece of this. Like, I want to be in this. You know?
And so the sickest shot, which I wish I had shot it because I always wanted to shoot every great shot of my own films, but I know that the other filmmakers are so dang talented that like they deserve the props. I make sure to mention all of them, but Jeremy Hogue, I want to say he was the one who had the Phantom Miro, and it was like you could put a Canon lens and run it like you would a Red, you know, shoulder mount, whatever. And I want to say, because we were taking turns, because we were like, I mean, it was just going. He was also, it was his camera. So I was like, yeah, you go shoot, you know, like, you know, your camera mostly for the, like, you're in a helicopter, you know how to shoot. Like, and I was also kind of like not testing him, but to see how he did. The sickest shot of the movie was Wrathy's tuck knee indie tantrum to blind shot at like 1,000 or 1,500 frames a second on the Phantom. And it was like right there. And it was like, he's like, here, and his hair is whipping and the water's just like bending and marbles. It was like the sickest shot. And I mean, yeah, there are dozens of those types of shots in the scope of what we shot that we didn't use. But that was the sickest shot of the movie, was that shot. And I was like, and I didn't shoot it. I was like, dang it. Because I felt like I didn't work so hard.
It's a Sean Kilgus production, and
Dang it.
Sean Kilgus didn't have the best shot in the movie. It's kind of poetic though. It's like, and it's also cool, yeah. But I see what you're saying. All right, so we're talking Prime. So you mentioned earlier, I think maybe off air before we jumped on the podcast, the reaction to Prime maybe wasn't what you expected, or was it what I guess what was the reaction to Prime when it came out?
You know, I think that like because Danny for Defy, Danny is such a favorite. I mean, he was like Parks always called him the people's champ. You know, everybody loved Danny. It was like Parks would always say Danny's better, and of course Danny would be like, no, Parks is better. And of course all of us are like, dang it, Parks is probably the most innovative talent, you know, of all wakeboarding, of all history. But Danny did a lot of things Parks didn't do, and Parks obviously did things Danny, I don't know. It'd be hard to say, and then you put those guys up against Randall, and they're like, dude, look at that guy's nuts. Like, you know, so I guess they all do their own creative thing, but dude, I'm sorry.
No, the reaction to Prime. You're like, so, you know, Defy was.
I feel like I'm mentally like there's so much information and so much emotion, right? But
it's fair.
Yeah. So anyways, Defy was people's champ movie about Danny Harf, and it seemed like no one would speak negatively about it. It wasn't because it was such an amazing movie. You know, there's camera quality was whatever it was. It was what we could afford. It was my filmmaking style, so some people may like it or some people may not. But there wasn't many people who I ever heard, and I never witnessed anybody speaking badly about Danny. So I think that his movie was received with love, and I think people really appreciated his movie. And then I got to be a part of that, right? So when I made Prime, I felt like the expectations were so high because, you know, everybody was like, how are you going to outdo Defy? And I'm like, well, I'm going to try, right? Because I don't know what else I can do besides reinvent myself and see what I can do. Just like every other time, every movie I made, the expectation was the same. I have to do better. I have to make a better film. And so Prime was no different than going into Defy, going into Drive, going into Butter Effect. I mean, every one of my movies had a big expectation. I probably had more expectation when I was in my younger years because nobody cared. Nobody knew if, you know, maybe, and they saw me in my last one, like, oh, he's still amateur video guy, like whatever. But I had expectation.
Yeah.
I wanted to do better, you know? So I think with Prime, I had like a lot of expectation. And so I chased after making the most, what I thought, and I really did at the time, I thought I made the highest level of production ever for wakeboarding. I mean, I wanted to be like what Justin did. I thought I did the highest level based on the camera production quality, the helicopters, the athletes, every shot was insane. Where we put cameras, how we got the shots, the locations we went to from Australia to, you know, I mean, it was just iconic. I mean, it was story. There was story of the Northwest or the West Coast Riders with Trevor and those guys section. And Josh Twelker. And that was so cool. You know, JD and his Prime, like, I mean, actually he kept peaking after that. It was crazy. He was kind of pissed after that and rode even better over the years. But there was just so much expectation, I think, on me to make the best movie. And I thought I did. I really thought I did. And I think that I really don't know what happened. I just know that I'd never seen a movie received so divided. You know, I think what happened for me, and I never saw this in my past because there wasn't an opportunity for people to post negative stuff in the past. I mean, maybe like, was it Wake World?
Yeah.
That had a lot of forums and stuff.
Yeah.
So you kind of used to like the haters on that and stuff like that. But most people, I think, really loved Defy, and they saw my heart was in it, and so was Danny's, and so nobody really was out there trying to bash us. But when Prime came out, I remember I was just devastated because I felt like I had just given all of myself, everything I had and more to make this film. And there was also a lot of emotion. There was Brad's accident happened. I almost drowned. You know, there was a lot of things that happened at the very end of that film. And I just remember being like, you know, really just wanting it to be successful. And maybe I wanted so badly that people loved it. And so when the first reaction that I got was like, people hated it. And it was the first comments on iTunes.
I didn't even know you could comment on iTunes.
Like you could review a movie and give it stars, and people gave it like 1 star, worst movie ever. You know, too much slow motion, too much this, too much that, the worst movie, like they blew it. I mean, just, dude, I was like devastated. I was devastated. And that unfortunately was a huge part of why I didn't come back. I was like, dude, maybe I blew it. Maybe I don't have what it takes. I thought I did and I don't. And maybe it was humility. Maybe it was just God kind of showing me that I needed to be humbled, you know, and maybe I think I was prideful, and it was hard, man. It was a hard, like, wake up call to, like, you know, all the things that happen, the risks and the rewards, and what's it worth? What's it worth to put 2 years of your life into a film, give everything you got, risk, you know, there's so much risk of helicopters and all these things and liabilities and accidents and all your time and your heart and everything you have. And just to have people tell you it sucks, you know, it was devastating. And of course there's perspective. You can say, hey, well, you know, this is some kid that did not make his own movie, who isn't 15 years into his career, who isn't out there doing anything other than bashing on a keyboard and thinking he's the hero. What do they call them? The keyboard warriors. Keyboard warriors, dude. And, you know, and so, you know, my friends, of course, all stepped up, and all my close crew got on iTunes and made all these, you know, either whether it was personal, like, hey, I was there, I saw this, I know what this is, like, you know, or just positive talk. But people were trying to lift me up and not let my movie bomb after they see me work so hard and see all the athletes work hard. And I'm like, did I blow it? You know? And so I left that movie, and after that, and thinking, man, I watched my movie and I'm like, I did too much slow-mo. You're right. Like, not having peer review. I didn't have peer review in my life. I never did. I mean, I had somewhat peer review with Spencer, but I didn't ever, like, really, I kind of wanted my craft to be my craft. Yeah. It was hard to give up the reins to other creatives. It was hard to change my style to appease other people. I wanted just to be like, well, this is my style, take it or leave it. If you don't want it, then don't watch my movies, you know, but this is how I do it. And I was devastated, man. And so for me, it was almost like Defy was the greatest achievement in my career. It was the greatest celebration of hard work that I've ever had, both financially, both with standing ovation for the trailer. I mean, just everything about it was like,
worked out.
It was like, that should have been the end. That should have been my, go out on top, you know, right? And I thought that Prime was supposed to be back it up. And it felt like it was, all of it was backing it up. I was doing all the things. I was crazy things, best camera stuff, best riders, best tricks, best angles. Everything was like such a high level. I thought in my heart, in my creative brain, everything, that I outdid Defy with production value. Nothing could be better than a Danny Harf story, but, like, aside from the Danny Harf story, the production value, the creative, like what I was trying to do, and the athletes and pushing the sport and the story and the depth and stuff, I thought I did it. And I don't know to this day, 15 years later or 10 years later, if I don't know where I land. I don't know where I am on that movie. I don't know if it sucked, because the athletes worked their butts off. Yeah. The helicopters flew. We spent the money.
The cameras were nice.
Yeah. The shots were amazing, but maybe I did too much of one thing and not enough of another, or I don't know. I've never felt so much like I second guessed something I worked so hard for in my life. Everything up till then felt like it was hard work, grit, and just determination to get to that level, and then success, but hard work to get there. So it was earned. And I felt like that was hard work too. And why didn't it come across that way? You know, why didn't it feel that way? And I don't even know, asking you, like,
I mean, there's a lot of factors at play, right? One for sure is in the core of any sport, anytime any major production comes out, movie, video, whatever, a lot of people watching it in the core are not going to watch it because they want to enjoy it. They're going to watch it to pick apart what they would do better in a perfect world. That's like a core boarding aspect. I mean, you probably saw it in snowboarding when you were growing up, skating and stuff. Like, that's what a lot of those 1-star iTunes reviewers do, right? They're not watching it to enjoy it as a movie. They're watching it to say, what can I do better? Or what should have been done better, this, that, or the other. And then This is my opinion, but another factor at play is I think a lot of people maybe don't understand the different types of movies and the audience they're catered towards. So like an Art of Flight, right, is not catered towards the core snowboarder who loves street riding, blah, blah, blah. Those kids are not going to understand that movie. They're going to be like, this is dumb. Why is there so much slow-mo in Art of Flight? I don't understand all the power riding. Like what? It's the same thing over and over, like, because they don't do that. And so like a movie like Prime is something I would show like my mom or my dad or my parents, for example, because they need slow motion. They need the high quality cameras and stuff to really understand even what wakeboarding is. They don't know a nose grab 9. They're going to be like, what? But if you show it in super slow motion, they'll be like, okay, grabbed it on his nose and then he passed the handle. I was like, okay, I'm kind of understanding it. So I don't know the answer either, but like just sitting here listening, it's like, well, I don't know. Those are probably 2 factors at play, I would imagine. And was it just on iTunes that you, like, I guess how much of a negative, like, what was the negative? Was it like 2 1-star iTunes reviews? And then Kilgus is like, oh man, wakeboarding sucks. Or like,
no, it wasn't like wakeboarding sucks. It was just, I think I'm a person who wears my heart on my sleeve and I always have. I mean, it's been one of the, I think, quality in places, and it's been part of my own struggle in other places. But I think that people like Danny, Watson, Danny, those guys, Benny G, it was a good thing that I was who I was and they're who they are. Right. And I think that I allowed myself to be affected by the negativity.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it was that people don't know how much pressure you're under, and you're trying to hold up what you feel like is the world. You feel like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, and expectation and sponsor expectation and everything going on. And you feel like you're like, yeah, I don't know if I can do this. And you have to fake it, and you have to find a way to persevere. So maybe you're drinking more than you should be drinking. Maybe you're not taking care of yourself, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You're like none of it. You're so maxed out, and you don't know when it's going to end. And you just really, like, at the time, I think even my faith, like I felt God was yelling at me to get my attention through the ending of Prime, through that season, because I was so far off of my true baseline of who I was and what my value was in this world, that if I didn't rein it in and understand that I can't base my value off of people bashing my movie, that can't be who I am and what my worth is in this world, and my stamp in this world can't just be as a wakeboard filmmaker.
Yeah.
And so I think I was forced through all of that, all the things that happened in the sequence they happened, that I needed to define myself by something much bigger. And I mean, I ripped a door off of a truck.
What? What are you talking about?
I was on a Malibu shoot. I have to tell you, this is another segue of like, because you're gonna use.
I don't know if this was
I was trying to give you a funny
an analogy or if this was a real.
No, so I ripped a door off a truck. I'm on a Malibu shoot. This is like 2016 or something. So right after Prime.
Fresh.
I'm in this very, very okay, I'm still a filmmaker. I still love wakeboarding. I'm filming with Massey and Chad, all the guys, and Grubby, and I'm like, I love this stuff still, but I don't know if am I a filmmaker guy that just made Prime but I'm still, this is what I do. So I know that I'm there for a reason, to capture great content. So that's it. But anyway, so we're all at the bed and breakfast where we're staying on this lake up in North Carolina, wherever it is. And all the athletes come back every meal, because that's where like the big bed and breakfast, everyone eats together, and then they all go to their houses to stay the night, whatever. But so everyone's hanging out, and it overlooks this. It's like deep like cliff lines, kind of like ravines down to the water. So very steep drop off. So the trees are like this, and then the hill goes off. Everyone's hanging out in the lawn playing, cornhole, hanging out, beautiful afternoon, evening, dinner's about ready. All of a sudden, I was up in my room and I hear this, because the filmmakers all stayed on site. We stayed at the bed and breakfast. All the athletes and other people stayed at houses. Anyway, so I hear this screeching, like a car accident, right? And then a boom. And it's like, holy smoke. So I run outside and everyone's running down, and basically a truck had come around the corner. It was just flying, and it's like 20-mile-an-hour corner, and they're probably doing 50, and they just flew off the road. And because they were making a hard left turn, trying to make it, and they were going off of a hill, the truck rotated sideways, hits a tree, crushes the cab, and then falls down onto another tree and crushes underneath the truck. So the doors are stuck shut and it's smashed. And of course, like any car accident, seen the horns going, right? Because that's something that just has to happen. And maybe that's the thing they automatically do is to alert people. But you're like, I'm alert. I know what's going on. There's a car accident. But anyways, so a couple of us jumped down the hill to see if we could help. This guy, Colin, was already in the back of the truck trying to break open the window and get to the guy. And I basically was like trying to help too. And everyone else is just standing up on the hill and it's like poison ivy and stuff, but we just jumped down. We're like, whatever, we got to help this guy. So I went over and I got like I popped open the back driver's side door. It's like a Dodge Dakota, little pickup truck. And I got my shoulder in, like farther in. And then I like literally, dude, like no joke. I like yelled and I folded the door in half and it like the window blows out and the door breaks off the hinge. And then we got in to get to the guy and he's like crushed up against the hood of the roof of the truck. And so we were able to break the seat back and got this guy out and everything was okay. But like he was okay because the accident was caused because he was drinking, he's on whatever. So he was also safe. He didn't get hurt badly, even though it was like, could have killed, him or anybody else. But I tell you that because that was the moment that I went home and signed up to be a volunteer firefighter because I was like, I need to do something now that's different. I need to give back. I need to stop taking and just start doing. And that was my calling. That was like, God said, this is your calling, go do it. And that was the moment of that calling was tearing a door off a truck to save someone's life. At the time, I thought I was, And so, but that happened in front of like 25 wakeboarders and people that, and like, so people like love telling that story of me tearing a door off a truck.
Just went Hulk mode and ripped
Dude,
the
it was
door off.
for real though. I was like, it was such an adrenaline rush, you know? But that's what changed my course of my life, dude, is like after Prime, I was so defeated and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who I was. 15 years. All I've ever known is making wakeboard movies. The next movie, the next movie, the next movie. And then I wasn't going to do it anymore. It was done. What do I do next? Like, what's my next chapter? And my dad was a volunteer firefighter. I always saw it and I was like, man, I should have done that. And I should have signed up. But instead I went to Peter Pan Island or whatever, Pinocchio Island, and wanted to be a wakeboarder video guy instead. And so I went and did that. But I knew that it was time to come back to like a center purpose of what I felt God wanted. And I didn't have strong faith at the time. But I had such a tearing of my soul that I needed to check myself. And I think that Prime, I think that movie, I think Brad's accident, I think all the things that happened in that season, and then that moment at that truck, and then everything led me to where I'm in my life. I'm not doing firefighting now, but my life is different. I have a son.
Catalyst.
It was a
at
huge
specific moment in time.
Well, it's like everything now has to make sense in my faith journey of like, God, what do you want me to do? What do you think is best? Not what I want. Because I lived my life for me for so long and I didn't care about anything else. I was like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. There was no B plan. It was just, I have to succeed at this and there's no B plan.
Yeah.
Where now I just go, God, if you want this for me, then allow it. If you don't, then show me that you're going to close this door and that there's something else. And so I would say that now, what's so crazy though, dude, is I never thought I would do wakeboarding videos again. I thought it was just done, right? Moved back to Florida, divorced, single dad, trying to figure out what's next in my life. Doing all these, still a filmmaker, trying to figure out what's next. I don't know. I have drones. I have, cameras. I still love filmmaking and stuff. I'm not making a wakeboard video. So what do I do, right? And then I start doing projects for boating and I start doing little things, little short athlete vignettes. And now I'm pitching projects to wakeboarding, these little short 5-minute videos that can break into multiple socials, but like working with Grubby again, we're working with Noah, working with Steele or whoever. And I'm like, dude, I get to do what I always loved to do. And there's no pressure. I don't have to worry about my movie being the best movie ever, but I get to share in that little bit of a moment that I loved about filmmaking, where I get to be with the athletes and I get to get these cool shots and make a little edit. And it's like, I get to still do what I love. And at the end of the day, I feel like I'm fulfilled.
There's a peacefulness to it.
There is. Yeah. And I get to share now, my son's 7 and he loves to he's filming on my camera now, filming me ride my dirt bike, or he flies a little drone in our big grass field and he loves it. He's like, I want to be a cameraman like you, Daddy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even need him to be a cameraman. I was just like, whatever he wants to do. But I just want him to be centered, you know, and have like have his God-centered purpose out in front. And I want him to be supported, you know, and not have this world's ridiculous expectations, but just to know that he's pursuing his passions, you know what I mean? And whatever that does to like lead him, cool, you know? And I know that it takes growing up to get to the place that we're all at when you figure out I made a lot of mistakes, but it was because of those mistakes that made me who I am. So I can't be ashamed or bummed that I made mistakes or that I fell on my face or that my movie got bad reviews or movies that were successful. I can't have pride in that either. I got to be thankful for the path to be here now and that I learned all that I met those people, that I went on those trips and I traveled the world. I mean, I saw the world. Most of my friends I grew up with didn't have that kind of like crazy experiences, but I got to do it because I made movies and I got to see the world. It's
incredible
crazy.
Journey.
Crazy.
There's no doubt about that. Well, thank you for sharing.
Deep.
No, that was good. That was
tear-eyed,
good. Thank you for sharing that, because I know I was curious on the whole Prime thing, because I was just very curious on. You mentioned at the beginning, you know, the reaction to it, and I was just very curious to hear about all of that. I didn't know it had such a, you know, profound impact on your life. It sounds like obviously everything happens for a reason, right? So that's, you know, part of it. But I want to dig a little bit more into Prime as a whole. One, where'd the name come from? Prime and Defy. I forgot to ask Defy. Butter Effect, I get that one. Concussion, we got those ones. I get those ones, but Defy and Prime.
I think I want to give that one to Kevco. Because he was such an integral part of Defy. Gosh, he was such an important person for us. Like he was like a cheerleader when there wasn't things that his talents could provide. He was just our supporter. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like he just loved the sport. He loved us. So he just wanted to help. And Kevco, we were trying to think of a name. And it's like the funniest thing. It's like, unless you're having to come up with a name, like even Grab Matters.
Impossible task.
You're like, oh my gosh, like what are we going to call my podcast? You're like, well, let's call it Grab Matters because matters grab. Like
I sat on it for 6 months and then I thought it was terrible. And I said, screw it. I just have to do it anyways.
But now it sticks. It doesn't matter what it is. It's like once it's like Defy. People could have made fun of Defy. Like, oh, Defy what? Like gravity? Like, oh, you're the best. Like whatever. But it doesn't matter because once people like have like they love the name or they like the name, then now it's what it's called. Yeah. So I think Prime was kind of like, I looked at it as more like prime cut. Like these are the prime guys. Like these are the prime time. This is the prime kind of moment for all these guys right now. And we're going to make a great, like grade A prime production. And that was probably why, and Kevco like helped shape that, you know, like, so that was like why we came up with that name.
Which one do you think is more, I guess, iconic, maybe not iconic, but like recognizable? Because in my brain, growing up, Prime, I guess if I was a little bit before my time, but like Prime to me, I perceive as more of like a well-known wakeboard film rather than Defy. But would you say it's in your eyes? I guess.
Well, I guess I would say that it was more maybe if that's the case for certain people, then it's just like anything else, it's generational. Sure. You know, like it's funny to think that the movies that were my Defy or Prime were 12 Honkies, you know, but there was people in front of me, like I'd say even before that was Hit It. Like Hit It was my favorite wakeboard film made by FLF. It came out in like 95, but it was Byerly and like he did a Slim Chance, like, you know, switch front mob off the double up and like, I mean, a skeezer. I mean, Byerly was doing, I mean, on this Flight 69, like, I mean, like that video was insane. Kobe and all those guys. I mean, I just was like, these guys were my heroes, dude. I was like, oh my gosh. And to get to film with them eventually was cool. Yeah. But so that was my generation coming up, was like Hit It and all those movies. And then 12 Honkies when I was really a super fan. But I don't know. I think it's just, I think that Prime hit that audience that were people, because there was enough of a gap. Defy came out it was like 2009, 10 was production.
2011, Saturday, December 17th premiere.
Right.
The Beecham Strip Club.
That's what I'm saying, dude. It's crazy. After 10 p.m., like, get out. Look out and get out. So, but anyway, so, and then maybe, you know, you think about it, like 2 years passes and there's a new.
Well, dude, there wasn't much coming out after Defy, dude. It got Quiet Please, maybe something from Trevor, but like not several projects
Well,
every year.
And I think that was the thing that happened too. When I first started making films, the reason I think I got an opportunity is because Ron and BAME and FLF all were somewhat stepping away because they had done a lot of their big films were done before that.
Yeah.
BAME had done, Shafted, The Faction, and then Free for All. And those were all like Free for All was when I started, 2001, 2002, somewhere around there, I want to say. Ron was done with 12 Honkies and a couple other ones, and he was, of course, later did was a Transgression and stuff, but that was more of like Ron because of his relationship with Gator. And anyways, but like I think the filmmaking was coming to an end in wakeboarding when Prime came out. That was kind of like, and I wish I could say it was the mic drop, but I didn't think that it was over. I didn't know that wakeboard films were no longer going to be something we could make money off of. Like it wasn't like we couldn't sell movies anymore. Like it was like overnight there was no more revenue. We couldn't make money anymore. And so, like I said, now, like filmmaking now is short form social, or you get a big, like Monster says, here's $1 million, go make that film. But that's
No in between.
There's no in between.
Yeah.
There isn't. And then the only in between stuff I would say is short form that is something where maybe a brand says, hey, we want you to go make this story about this athlete, but we want it to also be parceled up into 25 social pieces.
A lot of deliverables they want.
A lot of deliverables. And it was really all about that one core piece that matters to the filmmaker and the athlete.
Yeah.
But they're trying to feed the mouths of all these different, needs of social. So it's kind of like but the filmmaking movie industry, I think, died around the time that Prime came out. And the sales reflect it too. It still did well, but it didn't do anywhere near as well as
I was curious.
Defy.
Okay.
No, it was like half, probably.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And so that was another thing. Like that was another hit, like a gut shot. Like, dang it, dude. Like, and I don't know, dude. I mean, the hardest part about it is I wish I didn't think of Prime from the last moment of that chapter of just that negative review, because I wish I could have remembered all of the other things that were good about it, And I think that maybe eventually, and maybe I'd be there now, I could watch it and be like, and just enjoy it for the film that I made it to be. When I made that film, I loved it.
When was the last time you watched it?
Dude, I don't even know.
Oh, it's been a minute.
Well, I've watched pieces. My son likes to watch it. He loves Danny Harf. He got to meet.
I guess, yeah. If you watch a movie a bunch of times, at least me, when I go back, I don't usually watch the whole thing.
Right,
I'll
watch sections.
pieces that I really resonated with me. Obviously, I watched the whole thing last night in Defy and all these other ones. But okay, so we're talking Prime still. Dowdy, I want to talk about Dowdy a little bit because I feel like, am I wrong in saying he should have had a much bigger prominence in the movie if it wasn't for him getting hurt? Was that the plan?
I don't think it was.
Or was it not?
I don't think it was the plan. I think Dowdy was young at the time. He was incredible. Like, I mean, he was like hands down maybe the sickest rider in that movie off the wake. Like, you were like, who is this kid that can throw so many double flips and backside 1080s off the wake? I mean, just everything he did was like his KGB 5 is still something that like I love watching his landings on those because they're just the most perfect landing. I think he was blowing up at the time, but I didn't have a spot for him because he wasn't really on the roster.
The roster was big.
I know
the rider list is crazy on iTunes,
and that was the thing is like
that's so many.
We went a little bit crazy too because we wanted everybody to be in it. I mean, there's a sponsorship obligation, of course. But there was a cool thing, like, I didn't know much about Daniel Powers at the time, and
DP.
He was sick.
Big fan.
Like it was like a last minute add on into the movie was Daniel Powers, and he was sick.
Yeah.
So Dowdy. I mean, what I feel like is Dowdy got a big thing because he got to share it with Harley, and they had the closer. And the only thing I would have. I don't know at the time when Dowdy kind of made, he was being honest and he's like, I don't like any of these wakeboarders and I like Harley. It was like, I was like, okay. But that's Dowdy. I mean, if you know him, especially then he was very young, he's honest, and you got to respect that. The guy could back it up. He could throw down. He really was Dirty Mike Dowdy. Like, he can throw down off the wake and he could send it on everything. And so nobody could deny him as a rider. Yeah. And then he like was honest, and it's actually a pretty cool trait. I didn't know how playing the politics and PC and all the things. And he said what he said. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to run it. And I can't remember if it was Bill McCaffrey or somebody was like, dang, like when they saw that play for the first time, maybe at a premiere or something, they're like, whoa, that was a big statement to say about all of your peers. And obviously I know at the end of the day, Dowdy said that not as like truly like, I hate all these guys and I only respect Harley. I think at the time he was probably in a season where he's like, you know what? He's like, he was a pioneer and he's on his own and he's going to say what is on his mind. And I think that he did. And I really think that he obviously likes all these other guys, respects a lot of the other athletes and stuff. But I think he was fighting hard against the grain, I think, from his start. He's coming out of Michigan, right? Like he's like the underdog. And so he's probably got that grit. Like, I'm going to do it. He's got
the Midwest grit, dude.
He does,
Cold
dude.
winters up there.
Yeah, dude. And so I think that he just kind of I think that was his persona, a little bit his persona. Yeah. Like no different than Danger Boy Deegan, like kind of just like love him or hate him at the time. He could back it up, and that's how he feels. So, but it's just in an industry like every other industry where everyone's playing it PC, when someone says how they feel, you're like, dang, that's a bold move.
It's refreshing.
Cotton, let's see how it plays out, But yeah, but it was cool like that. So yeah, I think I put Dowdy where I could. I mean, he got the closing section with Harley. Yeah. I thought that was a pretty good nod to his, because I didn't know what to do. Who's gonna close that video, Harley or Dowdy?
Yeah.
I mean, of like the talent pool.
I mean, at that time, it's Harley. Like, well, Dowdy as well, obviously, but like other than that, I mean, that's Harley's like.
So put those guys up against each other. Yeah. Arguably the two best wake off the wake guys at the time.
Yeah.
And they're like talking about each other, and it's like kind of like battling it out. It's kind of like, whoa.
Yeah, it's cool.
Pretty big. Again, one of the things I thought was a good thing, that was like groundbreaking or definitely like, this is the sport right here. This is like the most minute like antagonist and protagonist, or maybe not like both of them antagonists. I don't even know, but but just that like battle and premier level of riding happening, and the sickest shots and the sick, like
energy, passion, and honesty, and all of it just wrapped up. Because there were some good quotables in Prime. I feel like when I was rewatching it at the beginning. I mean, Dowdy obviously, but like it wasn't just like oh, I love wakeboarding. It's so cool to hit the water. Like going wake to wake is great. I want to push the sport. Like there was some, dare I say, hot takes that was in that, and it was nice to listen to it, because it was like, oh man, you don't really get that much of that anymore. I mean, obviously we don't have wakeboard movies like we did, and that was kind of the end of the high production wakeboard movies. You had a couple after, but I guess, where do you see wakeboarding films or action sports films fit in these days as someone in your position?
Well, it'd be interesting, like I said, with the trends. I mean, I was pretty discouraged for a long time, like thinking that the sports shifted from supporting wakeboarding inside its own kind of culture. And I'd say that like social media killed the video star kind of a thing, and everybody's like, well, we got to wind this thing up and everyone's just doing it because they have to do it. Right. And I think that like, it doesn't even matter what you put out. If you put out something horrible, you can just put out something tomorrow and nobody even remembers the horrible stuff. Whereas when movies were made, it was like, you get one chance a year maybe to make a big movie. And everybody bases what you did off of that last big movie, and now there's less pressure, but there's less reward, there's less incentive. There's really no incentive sometimes, as a filmmaker. I think of it now as I'm trying to see like so for me now, I'm just doing so much general production in different industries, from construction to like commercials to like whatever. But I still, at the core of what I do, I love cinematography and I love storytelling. So those two things I take very seriously and I appreciate about every client job I get. So everything I developed from wakeboarding movies.
Yeah.
And an appreciation for filmmaking. And then I try to do that. And I don't know if there's ever a shot to do wakeboarding. Maybe the next generation will be like, dude, I got a crazy idea.
Pendulum swings back. And
well, yeah, like let's I got an idea. Like, let's not show anything all year. Hey, sponsors, I'm going to go quiet. I'm going to go dark. And I'm going to just drop a hammer thing of all my best stuff. And all the old cats are like, you mean like make a video part?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, whatever, dude. Yeah, I guess so. It's like, yeah, you're doing what we did because now it's going to be cool again. But but in that interim, it's a bummer,
Be loud by being quiet. I mean, I will say, I'll give a shout out to the La Familia crew. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but it's a lot of the best boat riders right now. I'm pretty sure that's what they're doing. They're not showing anything. I mean, they're showing some behind the scenes stuff of like, hey, this is the trip we took. But I think as far as the clips are concerned,
they're holding on to it.
I think they're holding on to it.
Awesome.
So,
and that's the thing is like those kids are so insanely talented. They don't deserve what social media has done to their sport. They deserve to take the reins and say, we're going to do it our way. And that's awesome.
And they deserve the premiere night because you know better than probably a lot of people.
Oh my gosh. It's all about the premiere. It's so cool.
It's so much more than the movie. It's feeling, it's like a drug, right? Like it's feelings you can't even begin to imagine if you have anything to do with it.
Being there with like Keith Lyman, Benny G, my buddy Brent Starr, like getting to have him be a part of Butter Effect, like where he reached down to pick me up at the start of my career. He helped me. And then I took him as far as his riding would allow into my movies, like all the way up to Butter Effect, where he's in California riding with the big dogs, And it's like all those guys were at the premiere and we're watching their section. And I remember like I'd move around. I'd know whose section's coming next. And so I'd shuffle over because all the riders are together. We're all like, not because I told them to be, but because they're all like there to see it and support it front row. They're all just so excited to see their video part.
Yeah.
And to have their peers and people screaming for them. And so it was the coolest thing to just shuffle around and be a part of that moment of like, stoked out fist bumps and, high fives and stuff with these guys that you just spent, a year working on a video part. And they're like, I picked my song and whatever. It might've been pre-clearance days, but yeah, like, and then you get to celebrate together. The premiere night was so rad. So the fact that La Familia guys are doing that, I'm like, yes, because they're doing it for themselves and they deserve that big movie night, dude. There's nothing cooler. Setting up a premiere, showing up, like it's just the coolest thing.
Yeah.
But it takes being proactive. Like they're already putting in the work to film, to push their sport. They might as well have the premiere night. They may not be able to make money on selling the movie, but if that's not what they're in it for, then it's about that premiere.
Yeah.
And it's about that recognition of like, here's my video part, And if they found a way to appease the sponsors and social media by giving them what they can in the meantime,
it's the modern formula, maybe,
dude.
Yeah. And I don't know if they're gonna do premieres. I'm assuming
they got to, dude. Make it happen, dude. Make it happen.
But yeah, I'm excited for that. And I guess it takes them all coming together saying, hey, we're going to hold all these clips that we could put on social media for the instant gratification.
Well, riders back in the day, like it wasn't, I'm not going to name names, but it was hard because, the athletes are hungry for attention, just like, we're all trying to find it in whatever capacity, and they want to validate their efforts and work and their passion and their talents
in their career.
All the things. It makes sense, but some riders would film like 4 video parts a year. And so you'd watch 4 different movies with the same writing, and you're just like, dude, what are you doing? And it was hard because some guys were just didn't care, or they didn't realize they just wanted to, they just mailed it in. They wanted to be popular. They want to be successful. And so they think, oh, I have to film with this guy and film with this guy. And they film with anybody who will ask them. And you're like, dude, and it's like, like loyalty in that space means something because it doesn't just affect like my feelings. It affects the outcome of like what it is that they're going to show and who's going to see it. And if it's not with me, fine, but then don't film with me and film with them because now your writing is watered down. There's nothing cool about
100%.
it.
Yeah.
And that's something that like guys made mistakes and learned from, and other guys learned from other people's mistakes and just said, no, I'm going to only film this video part, dude. Like that's like guys like Randall, like go dark and you're like, where is he? And then boom, comes out like with some insane, you know, and it was like the coolest section ever was probably in, it was one of Ron's movies, and I wish I could remember. Oh, Natural Born Thrillers.
It's one of the greatest parts of boat riding to ever exist.
Okay, so
wakeboarding.
I don't know who's going to deflate or pump whose tires here, but obviously I can't say how much I love Ron. I love Justin. I want to say that Justin edited one version of Randall's section and Ron edited the other. And Justin's was the Tupac song, I think. And it was like the West Side cymbal up first, and it's like that method where he goes, dong. So there was like 2 releases of the section. And I just remember like, oh my gosh, like that method that he did off the double up, that was probably like, and no joke, probably 15-foot high method, wake to wake, really. I don't even, probably out in the flats because it's Randall.
I don't think he's ever touched that second.
Yeah, he doesn't even know there's a landing
doesn't
over there.
need it.
Yeah, he's like, no, we're going 40, it's fine. But that's the stuff that we all remembered watching movies. And those are the moments that you're like, dude, guys like Randall like made history in their writing. Because anybody who ever watched those video parts never forgets that stuff. And that's why it's worth holding on to your stuff, filming with intent. I mean, it's an ugly space when you're stuck to doing the needs of social media and stuff, and you rob the art of your own craft. It's like selling out because you just feel like I have to.
Yeah.
That's so cool that those guys are doing that, because they get to be a part of what all the guys that they watched coming up did, you know, and that's what it's all about. If you're a rider, you want to make some banger thing and drop it and be like, boom, check it out. Everything's perfect. The shots are perfect. The timing's perfect.
It's a big resume piece.
It is.
You got to build the resume. All right, we got another Patreon question from Bill Porter, kind of shifting gears here.
Oh my gosh.
Before we wrap it up a little bit. So Bill's got a 2-parter. One, of all the crazy things you've caught on film, what is the moment or part where you stopped and knew you had just captured something amazing?
Oh my gosh, Bill.
That's a tough one.
I mean, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to say. There's so many times that like, it was probably like, you know, Danny doing his first double Indy tantrum off the double up. Gosh, dude, I can't even, there's so many things. There's so many memories with each one of those guys that like blew my mind.
Were you there for Danny's front 10? Was that captain? I remember.
He did that switch heel side 10.
Yeah.
I was in back. Oh gosh, I had back surgery that day. It was like such a heartbreak that I missed that moment.
Just because
then I got to use it for Defy. Yeah.
The moment on the boat looked just.
I know, dude. So that was the thing. So there was. Gosh, I wish for Bill's one of my heroes too, but I wish I could. I feel like the scary moments and the achievements in those moments were. Dude, Radar Lake was insane, right? There's so many things in that moment that you're like, this is crazy. Like Danny or Dean doing like going to the other end of the pool with like the consequences of that were so high. I think it was just capturing the moment, like when I saw through like a film camera, for instance, like Super 16, like the motor running and it's kicking through the frames and you're getting like every other frame. I remember like one shot of Benny G doing a melon poke 7 from behind. I think it was in Drive. And it's like, he's like, snap. And I remember, and this happened in Butter Effect too.
The Butter Effect is the one I'm thinking, but yeah.
Yeah. And it might've been, but you're right. It probably was Butter Effect. And it was
just
like,
because I rewatched
every one of them was like, watcha, like this karate chop. And I remember in my brain seeing the frame on the film going, oh my gosh, like stuff like that.
That's a good one.
You know, Randall's, Drive. I wish we talked more about Drive, but Drive was like, we went to East. You got to ask me about Randall with camping.
I got it written down. We're good.
We're good. Too good. But anyway, so Randall it was like Iniat, or I can't remember exactly I can't remember if it was Iniat or the name of the gosh, it's so funny. It was so long ago, but there's a place we went filming, Pateros. It's when the spray painted trains in the background from Drive, and it was like not Jeff House, but Jeff McKee, Randall, and Benny G were the riders. Okay. And it was like 4 days of just glass, 100-degree weather. The water's like 64. Okay. Cold water, hot air.
The best combo.
Right. I guess. The
For
mornings, yeah, it's easy when you're the guy with the camera on not getting in the water.
That's true. That's true.
Watching Randall doing like backside 180s out in the flats, like every time he did it I felt so blessed to film Randall. I always remember being like, every time I filmed him, I was like, that was capturing history because it was the biggest thing you'd ever seen. The biggest trick, biggest backside 180, the biggest whatever. It didn't matter. It was like I was capturing when I was filming, and I felt this way. I know I felt this way about Danny. But I was so close to those guys, but getting Randall to come out of his wherever he was, to come out and film, and then to capture his, I'm pissed off again, and I'm gonna throw down, like his comeback of whatever it was so exciting. Because you knew that he was there to show everybody else in the boat that they couldn't do it.
He means business when he rides.
Dude, it's a thing that every rider, Danny, I mean, every one of them just goes, no. I mean, Danny could do these things that were like, what? And Randall will say the same thing about, Danny. Oh, Danny's the best wakeboarder. Like he lived with, when we were doing Drive, I want to say, yeah, Drive. Randall lived with Danny for like 6 weeks. That was so cool. Danny, Harf, Randall Harris, like, and it's like, we're filming every day. But I remember Randall being like, dude, Danny's the best. Cause Danny was like Blind Pete's and just all this crazy stuff, everything first take, boom, first check, whatever. And then Randall would go out and do like the most massive stale handle pass 3, which isn't easy, off the double up, or the most monster backside 7, like 20 feet out in the flats. And you're just like, and everybody else is like, there's no way I could ever do that. Like I remember even Drive, I want to say he did like a half cab 5 indie poke off the double up. And in the video, you see it from the towboat, and he's probably like 25 feet past the wake. Like it's almost like he's landing with like on the side of the boat. Like he lands so far over that, and he lands with so much line tension because he's flying. And that's the way that the guy rides.
Yeah.
So the consequences for that riding are brutal. Heel can edge at 27 miles an hour going forward, going 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour across the wake, and you get smoked, and he's going to blind. It's like crazy. So I think I feel like I captured a lot of history with Randall. Like that was probably some of the big moments. I don't even know if I blew it for Bill because he had.
No, you nailed it.
Okay.
That was. Saying Randall is not surprising, but that was a good like.
Well, I want to give a shout out to Bill
follow-up on
Porter
it.
too, because Bill has played a role in every one of our lives, like in this sport. Like he has helped every single rider in some capacity, and filmmakers. Like he just, whether it's just helping us out on discounts at the shop, like, or it's selling our movies, or sponsoring, supporting these athletes. Like I'm so. Anytime I can say thank you to him, like he's done so much.
Yeah.
For the
a lot of people say the same.
Yeah.
Very,
I mean, and that's what I'm saying is I'm just one person that he's helped.
Unspoken hero in a lot of ways.
Yeah, dude, because he's so chill, and he's just like he's never acts like he's done anything, and you're just like
humble hero. That's what we like.
Yeah, we love it.
We love those guys. We got 2 things before we wrap it up. Randall and camping. You obviously said that I had to bring it up.
Oh gosh.
So here we go.
And I'm not going to do justice to Randall in the way that he is like one of the most intelligent and funny people. He's his persona is so mystique, and like, if that's the right word, it's almost like he's almost untouchable, right? Like his personality, and mysterious to the other athletes and stuff like that. And he's so low key, and he's so like, what's he thinking? And so intimidating for me. Like I was so intimidated by Randall. And then you get to know him, and you're like, and he's super funny. And I have 2 parts to that story. We didn't talk about antiquing, but this is part of the same trip.
Well, I was going to bring this up right after.
This is part of the same trip.
1-2 punch here.
So, and I have a tendency to be a little bit obnoxious, and especially like I love entertaining people, like kind of class clown. So I'll say some pretty off-putting, funny things and see if I can get the other guys to participate in this inappropriate conversation. And they usually do. So first and foremost, we're going up to Washington to film for Drive. And I was like, you know, Benny G's in because he's Benny G and we're doing this thing. And I sold him on the plan, and Jeff McKee's coming, and we're like, all right, Slingshot's helping out. Jeff's a part of the movie. He's a style writer. This is going to fit well with Benny G. And then Benny G, and I want to say, had just signed Randall to Quicksilver because he became kind of like the team manager for Quicksilver.
Yeah.
This is like a breakout, such an awesome thing for Ben. Totally deserved. And then he was like, I'm getting Randall on Quicksilver. So that was a huge deal to have him on Quicksilver too. So then part of that kind of like getting them into the movie or like having them be a part of it was to get Randall there on location for filming. And so I'm like, all right, guys, I have this insane spot, glass for miles. Like it's going to be hot and it's the sickest location. So Randall gets into town and he flies in. And, you know, and this is still earlier in my career. I didn't have like a lot of money. It wasn't like we had big budgets. I mean, I think maybe Drive, I want to say had like $60,000, $70,000 total budget. I mean, that doesn't really go far when you're talking about all the things you got to do. And I'm shooting Super 16 film. So we're burning through money for that. So I was like, all right, guys, get to Seattle. And then we're going east to this place. And I didn't tell them how we were lodging, because at the time I went off of a memory I had from the summer before where my buddies and all went tent camping and had a blast. So I'm like, oh dude, great idea.
Easy.
We're going to sleep in tents, you know, in Eastern Washington in the dead of summer. And we're going to do this while we're filming for a movie, and it's going to be the best. And that's as much I went into depth in my own brain. So I thought, great idea, Sean. Well, Randall gets there, and Randall, again, full black, like black shirt, black pants, black shoes, black hat. Like he's the Vandal. He comes as he comes, and that's it. And he's like, the best person to do this impersonation, by the way, is Benny G, because he was right there, and he's okay. So you might want to have him do it, but he's like, Kill, I sure wish you told me we were going camping, man. I would have brought something other than these black jeans. Something like that. And I remember just being like, but Randall, if I told you we were camping, you probably wouldn't have come. And he's like, yeah, you're probably right. You know? And then, but we laughed and laughed. Cause I mean, then of course I have these visions and these memories of Randall sleeping in a tent with just blacked out and not only, you know, black, but thick, you know, whatever kind of pants they were, like Ben Davis pants. I don't even know what they were, but like not comfortable for camping, no escape from the heat. I didn't think it through. Like they were all hanging out in the like the lodge down by the water to get in the AC and have internet and things like that. So it was really funny, dude. It was like, but that's what also started for Randall and I, like a really good friendship, is because I would do these things and not think.
We're kind of shooting from the hip, you know?
A little bit green. You know, I'd make some pretty big green mistakes, and then everybody was just like, dude, what are you doing, man? So many mistakes. I made some, but antiquing.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly the players. I know the players. I feel like it was JD, it was Danny, Rusty, and Randall, and Big Spence was there. We're all Steve Hahn, the photographer. We're all in Lake Bartlett, I want to say, in Arizona. We're houseboating, so this is for Drive. And somebody gets this idea, and I guess it was like a thing at the time. It's called antiquing, where they grab a handful of flour, and when someone's sleeping, you just pop it right in their face. And so they sit up and they look like an old antique covered in dust. And so it's quite funny. Not funny to be the person who's antiqued, of course, but it's funny to see the reaction. And these guys were just teeing off on each other for days, right? So I feel like I remember JD popping up, and he's just, you know, like one of his sides of his face got hit more, so he's got like some level of clearance. Like this part's not antiqued, but it's like this is antiqued because he was like a side sleeper. And he just sits up and he's upset and is not, but it's not just his face, dude. His entire pillow and bed are covered in flour. And it's like, and it's sleepy time. Like you want to wake up feeling fresh for the next shred. And you're not going to sleep well covered in coughing up flour. And this is just what was going on.
Yeah.
Right. That same trip, I remember talking to Randall, and it was a serious conversation. I was like, Randall, have you ever sharted? And he's like, and I think I had just seen like Along Came Polly or whatever that movie was, that whole scene. And he's like, girl, even the cool kids shart, bro. And I'm just like, and it was just like, he was so legendary. He's so legendary. And if I saw him today, I would still just like feel that like presence of this legend, Randall, and like that he's so funny. Like he's the most like, he's super funny. And so he just always has the one-liners, and he's so quiet, and then boom, drops this hilarious one-liner. So yeah, that was the other one.
That's yeah. Wow.
I know so many things.
Randall
What are you
aura
gonna do?
is just it's so big, and I don't know. I've heard so many stories about him, and it's just like, and I watch his riding. It's just like, I think some of the parts I rewatch the most are Randall's, for a reason.
Yeah,
It's just so.
well, I think he's any rider can. I mean, gosh, you think about guys like Dean or Keith. I mean, Dean Smith, like, arguably goes bigger than anybody, or did, right? I mean, he did everything out in the flats. Like, he rode insane. And then Keith, like, he had an era where he was that way too. So it's like, I don't know. But I think anybody can watch Randall. I think the fact that he steps it up to like 27, 28 miles an hour, 95-foot rope, or whatever he was at that season, and then does what he does. The other guys that go just as big but go, I'm not going 27 miles an hour. There's consequences at 27. That's like almost like water skiing speed. Yeah. And then like you make a mistake, you're in trouble.
Randall also had good kits, good outfits when he rode. That was always a big thing. Randall had. I'll say, had flannel. He had a flannel phase. That was a good phase. So yeah,
dude, watch him even in drive. He had like a black bandana and he had like a basketball jersey, and it was so sick.
Yeah,
and he's like holding the KGB grab. That was the thing Randall had to do, and that's what made him who he was. But he influenced so many riders to hold your grabs better.
Yeah.
Grab better. Grabs matter, right?
They freaking do. Sean.
You know what I mean? And so Randall is like, no, that's a weak grab. I'm like, dude, you're holding it for like 2 seconds. You should have been like 3.5 or something, like longer. And I'm like, but then when would you have rotated? Like,
when are you gonna pass the handle, bud?
Don't be so selfish. When are you gonna pass this thing? But so that's pretty cool.
Man, all right. I think that was a good way to kind of wrap it up. Is there anything else you want to touch on? Obviously, there was a lot that happened, and I'm sure there's tons more. But is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap it up? Or
gosh, I don't even know. I feel like I gave you a 4-hour podcast. I'm sorry.
We're coming up on 3, which is good. There was so much good stuff in there, and there's always more to uncover. But
yeah. I think. For me, I think just looking back, like I said, I'm so thankful that I got to tell this story now, like relive those memories, because, I don't know how to completely unpack Prime at the end there. And maybe someday it will be revealed. Like, I think it's kind of a wisdom journey. Yeah. That I'll figure out where to compartmentalize that for myself. Yeah. Cause I just haven't figured out where to put it. But I know that it was necessary, like I know that the season I was in and now where I am in life, it's like looking back, everything was necessary to get to where you're at today, and so I'm so thankful for that, and thankful that I get to still, go out there and make videos with these guys and just make these little short form kind of like mini video sections. Yeah. And it's fun, dude. It's like, that's cool, like that. And my son now gets to like do it, and he loves wakeboarding, and so it's been kind of a crazy time because we love moto now, and then we also love wakeboarding, and I love foiling because it's kind of a new challenge, something fun and stuff. And I'm just at that age where I'm like, yeah, what's easier than wakeboarding? I should get into moto because that seems super safe. And then, by the way, I did break my ribs. I might send you the video back in November. That was second day on my KX250 and just got chucked off. And that was a pretty entertaining video of me trying to like breathe again after.
I heard ribs feel great to break.
And I broke, and I know that they're all different, but I broke 2 in my back. And so it was like the pain and everything even now to this day, it's been 5 months, and pulling wakeboarding is like, I'm like, I got it. Like, it's always loading those muscles on that broken rib area. It's like, dude, it's been 5 months, but I'm old. So
it's a
kind of
time
makes
one
sense.
too, I think. Right?
Yeah, it takes some time, but yeah, man, there's so much to be thankful for. And I don't have regrets, because every mistake I made, I learned from, and every, blessing that I received, is a great memory that I want to be thankful for the rest of my life. So I'm just so grateful for the riders and the sponsors and just the people that helped me do films, and that I got to do it. What a cool memory to have, is just
seriously
making movies.
Yeah. That's a good outlook to have. And I mean, thank you for you've made a lot of content that's been very influential to a lot of wakeboarders. I don't know the numbers, but it's thousands, tens of thousands of wakeboarders have watched the stuff that you've helped create with the riders, and I know I'm one of them. So it's, massively influential. So thank you for all that you've done, and obviously thank you for coming on. This was a blast. I knew it was gonna be a good one. I liked it. I was excited for it. So thank you so much for coming on, and all you continue to do. So
thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Yeah,
so much fun.
Absolutely, and thanks everybody for tuning in. We will see you guys in the next episode.